morning, everybody. It's 8:30. We'll call this morning's meeting of the County Board to order for Tuesday, September 14th. Our first item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any agenda additions? None?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Cayley. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. We'll move into citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard this morning on items not on the agenda? Any citizens to be heard on items not on the agenda? Do we have any online?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We will move into the approval of bills and vouchers.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from August 24th.
Mr. Chair, I do have a correction in the COVID-19 update. It states that I had commented on struggles that I'd had with past decisions on
Can
masking.
you, Commissioner Mojo, can you tell us, you're on page 2? Okay.
It states that I'd commented on struggles that I'd had with past decisions on masking. I don't believe that I'd commented on anything that had happened in the past, just felt that going forward.
Okay.
So if I could strike that, I would, and that appeases the board, I'd make a motion to approve as corrected.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Ebinger with the correction as noted. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Next, we just want to give an acknowledgement here to Sabin Harvest Days. They donated a check on behalf of our canine, Sheriff's Canine Group in the amount of $150, and we want to thank them for that donation. It's a good cause to be supporting, so. Okay, with that, we will go into our 8:35 item. We have with us Kathy McKay and Jamie. We're going to get our COVID update. Morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and
Morning.
Commissioners. If I can get my... Sorry, just be a second while I pull up the PowerPoint slide. Thank you. Okay, we're ready to go. So here is our weekly update. So I have the number of cases in Clay County. And so as you see, September 6th, that was 165. And now as of the 13th, we've jumped up to 291. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise as we look at Cass County, and they had jumped up previously ahead of us. They were at 518, and this week they're at 527, so the jump isn't as high, but they had certainly a large increase previous to this. Our active cases in Minnesota, 13,829, and then that was on September 3rd. Then the September 13th number is 14,693, so still an increase. Active cases in North Dakota, 2,714, and we're at 2,815. So we're seeing still some increases in those numbers. The next page gives the active cases by age. So you can see again, as we talked about, we're seeing the younger population. We're seeing some increases there that we had never seen previously. So the 5 to 9-year-olds at 29, 15 to 19-year-olds at 31, and the 20 to 24 is at 30. So we're seeing still some greater increases in those younger age groups, which we anticipated with this Delta variant We're still seeing numbers at the 35 to 39 range as well, the 25. We're seeing less in the elderly that we had previously last year, which was really the highest numbers, but now we're seeing the younger age groups. And then the next page is the cases per week, so you can see again, you know, we've got a little bit of a bump up in at the end now in August and September. So we're not seeing a decline or not a leveling off yet in those cases. So the graph just shows from back in 2020 through August or September 5th of 2021. So you see the highest, again, as we know, the highest number of cases back in November, and now we're getting a little bit of an incline in this last month. And then I'll let Becky talk about hospitalizations.
Good morning, Becky.
So this graph, again, just depicts number of Clay County residents that are admitted to the hospital on a weekly basis. You can see we had a little bump up the week before last with nine of our residents having to be admitted to the hospital. Last week, so far, we've had 3 that have been admitted to the hospital, and again, there's always a lag in the data, so I would expect that number to go up a little bit as the data gets a chance to catch up. And then since August 1st, the average age of our cases here in Clay County that have required hospitalization has been 54, with a minimum age of 4 and a maximum age of 90. And we've had 5 admitted to the ICU since August 1st. And then this just depicts North Dakota hospitalization data. So again, this is not our local hospitals only. This is for the whole state of North Dakota. So you can see as of yesterday, there was currently 17 in the ICU for COVID. And then the ages are depicted on the right-hand side of the picture too. So we are seeing some pediatric hospitalizations due to COVID throughout the state. In comparison, you know, these numbers are going up a little bit. So last week at this time, there was 11 in the ICU, and now that number has gone up to 17. And this picture is just showing, this is Sanford system as a whole, so across their 22 hospitals. This picture isn't meant to show, you know, hospital capacity for our local healthcare systems, but it's just compiled data that Sanford has put together for all the COVID patients that they're seeing. And so you can see of the 26 COVID patients that are on ventilators, only one is vaccinated. So this this picture really underscores the importance of vaccination. You know, a year ago we would say your greatest risk factor for being hospitalized for COVID would be underlying health conditions, and this year the greatest risk factor is not being vaccinated.
Good morning.
Morning, Jamie.
The next slide is what we usually look at in terms of the vaccine that is being provided by Clay County Public Health. So looking at our total doses, 15,447. And this past week, we had just 47 doses administered. And just want to also point out the fact that, you know, we have the listing of all the available sites people can have vaccine on our website, as well as the Minnesota Department of Health site. And our pharmacies are all continuing to provide vaccine, as are our healthcare providers in our community. So the opportunities for vaccine are plenty. And for public health, each week we have our clinic at the Family Service Center in our office, and we are planning for a clinic this Wednesday from 1 to 4:30, and we're offering both Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. And we are also going back to the DGF school on Thursday to do some second doses, and we will be in both of those buildings, working with our 2 school nurses that are working in those buildings as well. And then Friday, we're going back to MSUM at the Comstock Union from 9 to 1 and providing both Pfizer and Moderna. So each week, what we do with the minimum that we do is the clinic and the Family Service Center, but we also reach out to the homeless shelters, we reach out to corrections, the Juvenile Detention Center, and anyone who's told us they're still out there that's homeless and has not received a vaccine. So we go to those sites when there's a need. We also ask anyone who's struggling to get a second dose somewhere that they give us their name, and we will try to connect them, if not with our own clinic, then with one of our pharmacies or healthcare facilities. That's it.
Do you want to do the?
Sure. And then the next slide, the statewide data that we've been sharing each week, and we are making some progress this week. The number of people across the state that have had at least one dose is 71.3%. A month ago, we were at 68.9, so it's slow but sure. And then those that have completed the vaccine series this week at 67.3, and then a month ago, we were at 64.6. But also the breakdown there by age group, I think it's nice to see that for those 12 to 15-year-olds, we are seeing 52% that have had at least one dose and 45% that have had completed the series. And then a month ago, we were at 46% for those with one dose and 38% for completed series. And then the 16 to 17-year-olds, we are at 59%. Who've had one vaccine, 54%, and that have completed the series. So overall, we're kind of catching up with that 65-plus population that was our highest percentage, but we're making some slow progress across the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
And this is just our breakthrough cases. So this is updated weekly by the Minnesota Department of Health. And as you can see, that top number proportion has gone up a little bit from last week. So about 0.6% of fully vaccinated Minnesotans have wound up testing positive for COVID. The breakthrough hospitalizations are still low at 0.036%, and breakthrough deaths at 0.004%. So still very, very small proportions for hospitalizations and deaths. And then we just wanted to make sure that the public is aware that we have several testing options in our local community here. So the Vault testing site here in Moorhead is still open. Also, Minnesota residents have an option to order a at-home saliva test kit free of charge. The Fargo Community Test Site is another location. Both of our healthcare systems, Sanford and Essentia, offer testing, as well as Family Healthcare, and then Walgreens, the pharmacy here in Moorhead. All of the details of this are listed on our website with hours and locations for people to view.
Thank you. Yesterday, we met, our CARES 2 committee met, and we had some discussions about planning moving forward and some of our concerns regarding, or how we plan for the new executive order that's been issued but yet to be or no date has been set for it, but we need to plan for that. Obviously, there could end up being much more testing. We are one of those businesses or companies that would be required because we have over 100 employees, and our number is about 640 employees. And so we will need to follow those rules as they're put into place. So Steve, I guess I'm going to ask you, I want to try to keep us on time today. We got a really busy schedule, but if you can maybe just go over a little bit about what we talked about there and how we can start the process in terms of knowing who has the card and who doesn't, and that type of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you mentioned, right now, we don't necessarily know the specifics, the guidelines that is going to be set up by the federal OSHA department. But in Minnesota, we do know that we're one of 22 states that participate in a OSHA plan. And as part of that, we then are responsible to follow the federal OSHA guidelines and or develop our own within 30 days of implementation from the federal guidelines. As I mentioned, one of the things that, as Commissioner Campbell mentioned, one of the things yesterday we talked, one of the things that we do know is we know that a portion of the guidelines are going to be a requirement of who is vaccinated and who's not. That's going to be a requirement. And so later today, Human Resources is going to be sending out an email requesting that our employees provide us their vaccination status if they have a card that they would be able to forward that. We would be looking for our employees to forward that, bring that forward.
So I think that's just the update, and I think we want to assure our employees that goes into an HR confidential file, and it's just that at some point, we're gonna need to be able to verify based on the new rules. So we want to get a start on that moving forward. And moving forward with those who aren't, and the requirement for weekly testing can become an expensive item, and so we need to be able to kind of have a number of how many of those are, so we can prepare financially to handle that, so. All right, do you have anything else for us, Kathy, Jean, Becky?
No, I
Frank,
think that's it.
I attended, or watched, on Zoom, a meeting on CHAC, and they indicated that our nursing homes, that the people in the nursing homes are vaccinated, but it's the workers that aren't vaccinated. You know, that's why, as far as our rates, they could be higher if the workers would be vaccinated that work there. But the people in the nursing home that are residents there are pretty well vaccinated, but it was an interesting fact that it's the workers that aren't vaccinated in those places, so.
That's correct.
I just thought it was an interesting fact that was brought up there.
Oh, that's very good, yeah.
Right, anything else for us? Thank you. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
next week.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is a request to approve Red River Regional Dispatch Center amended and reconstituted joint powers agreement. I think the sheriff was going to be here.
Mr. Chair, I believe that the city of Dilworth is,
Oh, I'm sorry, I just jumped ahead here. Request to adopt resolution 2021-39 for City of Dilworth to receive tax forfeit parcel for authorized public use. Peyton, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I think it's Minnesota Statutes 282 provides for the ability to receive tax forfeited land from the county. We've done this a couple other occasions. It seems like I show up here every 12 months or so to formally make this request. And the idea is to provide for affordable housing, correcting blighted conditions, which is what was being accomplished in this situation as well as the previous two. And the City of Dilworth has really made a commitment towards providing for affordable housing. We've partnered with Habitat for Humanity for the previous two builds. And just as an aside, if you're free this morning at 11:30, the Habitat will be holding a wall raising in Dilworth for the next family. And I'd like to, acknowledge that the county's a partner in that as well, since they were, a partner in handing over that lot to us about a year ago now. So that wall raising will be occurring at 11 Prior Street. So if you're available, come to that. And we hope to, in about another year from now, do another wall raising on this lot that we're formally making this request for today. I think this is at 109 Adams. And vacant lot there. I think there used to be a home there way back when, but it's just being farmed out, or I guess some gardening that's been happening there over the past several years. But we would like to acquire that lot, and with hopes of transferring it over to the Habitat for Humanity.
Any questions?
I make a motion to approve the request.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo, and this is in regards to Resolution 2021-39. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Peyton. All right, now we can bring the sheriff up. I got ahead of myself here, Sheriff. All right, we're looking at an amended and reconstituted JPA.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, for having me this morning. We were just here to update our JPA with the Regional Dispatch Center. Since we received the official 2020 census numbers recently, it shows that we have a decrease in the amount that we will be paying or for our cost share at the Regional Dispatch Center. We've dropped from a 10% cost share to a 8.3% cost share. So what we're here today for is for the approval to to amend that JPA.
That's good news, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve that.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ebinger, second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Easy work today, Sheriff.
Was, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we have a request to approve resource recovery facility construction change order number 1. Mr. Larson.
Good morning again, Commission. Before you this morning for your consideration is change order number 1 in relations to the resource recovery facility project. Again, just a little background, this board has previously approved a guaranteed maximum price for this project, and certainly while Kirk and his staff and representatives from the City of Moorhead have put a great deal of planning in this project, we know through our previous projects that there'll be some issues that will come up that will impact the cost of this project. And to address those unplanned costs, we have some two types of contingencies. One, the construction contingency, which construction engineers, our CM at risk, controls in the spending. And also, we have an owner contingency, which is a cost to the county and comes before this board when we make those changes. And just a note with this, you previously also provided Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Mojo the ability to spend up to $50,000 prior to receiving board approval, and they'll bring it to that next meeting. And so the benefit to us this morning is generally the change orders that we have are usually an addition. We have two items before you, PR 001 and CP 004, which are credits to that. And with that, perfect timing, I'll turn it over to Mr. Rosenberger to kind of highlight those changes.
Actually, I didn't bring my notes because I had a consultant talking to me about spending some more of your money here. So maybe you could just cover them if you would.
So the first item is PR 001. I think our representatives from the SWAC have talked about this at previous meetings. One of the benefits that we've had through construction engineers and in looking at the CM at risk is doing some value engineering. They looked at the current layout of 34th Street, had 2 entrances into the resource recovery facility. And in talking with construction engineers and then also working through the City of Moorhead, it was determined that a entrance off 15th Avenue would be a better option. And in doing so, that caused quite a savings to the county because we didn't have to do as much work on 34th Street. And so the proposal before you this morning would be removing one of or not having to do some of the work on 34th Street, adding a asphalt driveway from 15th Avenue that will allow entrance from the south side of the facility. And so that would result in a total savings and deduct to the guaranteed maximum price of the facility of $653,006.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to also add the entrance off 15th, that'll be for the package trucks, the regular garbage trucks, and for the public. And then we'll also have just one entrance on 34th, and that will be for the transfer trailers. And those transfer trailers will be heading north and then head east on 18 to Highway 9 out to either Perm or the landfill.
And the second item on the list is CP 004. Not quite as large of a deduct, but a deduct nonetheless. Construction engineers is suggesting installing a 4-inch PVC pipe rather than copper, which would result in a savings of $955.86. And with that, I would yield for any questions.
Any questions? Obviously, that is good news. I know originally when we reported this, we thought that number was going to be about 500,000, so it's good that it came in what it did. Unfortunately, we're going to have another change order coming up pretty soon that's going to probably take a portion out of the way, but this is good. All right, we have a request for change order number 1 to be approved.
I would move to approve change order number 1.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kaylee, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Did we have, did
Resolution,
we take that 10-10 item right now because we have a public hearing?
or
at-
the resolution?
Huh?
The resolution?
Yeah, so establish the solid waste service fees and tipping fees.
I'll be right back.
Is there another resolution too?
Yeah, there's a resolution for the PCA that we have to do for the PCA.
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's do that one now, and
Okay,
then
the,
we'll wait for the other one.
Okay.
That
The resolution before you is essentially the PCA for our grant. We need to provide to them some documentation on how we're going to finance our project. We've done this several times, but this is just one more time, and hopefully this will satisfy their concerns. As you can see, the guaranteed maximum price is $21.8 million, and the county will be paying for it through a $7.5 million grant from the PCA, Pollution Control Agency. And we also will be, later on today, you'll be passing a resolution regarding the solid waste grant, or I'm sorry, the bonds, general obligation bonds. And then the balance of the project will be paid through solid waste reserves of $3.5 million. So essentially, it's pretty clear cut, pretty straightforward, but I'll stand for any questions you may have.
All right, any questions?
Mr. Chair, I know that a significant amount of work has gone into getting us this far, and I just want to again thank Kirk and his staff for the work that has gone into that. I see Chuck Hendrickson from the city of Moorhead is here because this is a joint facility that we've really advocated for. So look forward, continued partnership as we move forward with this. So I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-42.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Mojos, second by Commissioner Gross. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you. I will see you later.
Yep, thank you. Matt, do you want to come up? Do you have some PowerPoint stuff you have to get set up for this public hearing? Or you're set up? Well, I'm trying to buy a couple minutes here.
2 minutes. Perfect.
Come up and do some more setup. I can't call the hearing, we can't call for the public hearing until 9, so. Okay, all right, we're gonna take a quick 2-minute break. It's 9:01, so we will go to item number 6, public hearing, Red River Valley Electric Co-op's petition for rezoning in Glyndon Township. And then we have an attachment on that and some other documents. Do we have a motion to open the hearing?
I'll move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. This item, I just want to let everybody know that this item is scheduled for 45 minutes, and I want to keep us on time on this. I know we have a lot of interested parties who would like to present. I want to remind everybody that our board has received the packet from our planning director regarding the Planning Commission's decision and some of the recap of that. In addition, we've received a couple of letters, and so at this point, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us a summary of things that have transpired.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So before you is a petition for rezoning brought forward by Red River Valley Co-op Power. I'm going to give you kind of the same presentation that I gave to the Planning Commission, just so you kind of have a sense of the information that was taken into consideration at that meeting and how they came to their decision to recommend this. They did make a recommendation. The vote was 7-2 to approve And we'll touch on that here after I kind of go through some of this. So the applicant is petitioning to rezone about 6.82 acre tract of a 64 acre parcel to construct a service center / office. The current zoning of that 64 acre parcel is Urban Expansion District Tier 1 with Resource Protection Wellhead Protection Overlay. The proposed use is not permitted under the current zoning. The proposed zoning is limited highway commercial. The proposed use would be permitted as a conditional use under that zoning district. So this is the location. It's kind of just east of Dilworth. It's in Dilworth's planned growth area. And then the site is on the west side of County 11 and just south of 15th Avenue North. So urban expand, I'll just kind of go through all the zoning districts because there's kind of a layer of zoning districts for this parcel. So I'll start with the Urban Expansion District Tier 1. These are our goals in our current 2002 comprehensive plan is to establish a comprehensive growth management strategy, promoting orderly and efficient growth of residential, commercial, and industrial development. Part of that is working with cities and townships to identify these urban growth areas, which we've done, that have the potential to be served by public services in a cost-effective manner, and discouraging development from occurring at unsewered urban densities outside of cities until these services can be provided. Some considerations with regards to this proposal. This proposal is in the city of Dilworth's planned urban growth area and their 2-mile ET area. So they have subdivision authority, and they heard last month the plat request from the applicants and approved the preliminary plat. The final plat would be heard and decided on based on the outcome of any zoning changes. The future land use map for Dilworth shows this area, and you can kind of see it here all the way south along County 11 to be commercial in the future. The property does require water and sewer, and it can't be connected to municipal services at this time. So for the Resource Protection Wellhead Protection Overlay District, is to implement, the purpose of it is to implement the goals of the 2002 Comprehensive Plan, the Local Water Management Plan, the Wellhead Protection Plan. The idea of this is to protect, of this overlay district is to protect the city of Moorhead wellhead protection area and their drinking water supply management area, including those sensitive areas above the Buffalo Aquifer. So the goals of that would be protecting and preserving groundwater quality in the county, and we've kind of achieved both of these objectives. So these are the goals and measures as related to the wellhead protection overlay zoning district in our 2002 current comprehensive plan. I'm not going to read them all, just summarize them. Basically, kind of three things with these goals and measures is requiring for a parcel of land that's in, or a use that's in the wellhead protection overlay district. One of the requirements is that new commercial businesses hook up to municipal sewage treatment and water supply, preventing the placement of any underground storage tanks and above ground storage tanks storing hazardous materials, and then also regulating the expansion of existing gravel pits that are within our wellhead protection overlay zoning district. So those are kind of the three big things that these goals and measures try to accomplish. Some groundwater resource protection, just a little bit of overview. Some of the key terms from the state. A drinking water supply management area. Are there areas that contain wellhead protection area, but they're outlined by clear boundaries, so they're always bigger than the wellhead protection area. They typically follow roads and property lines. And the drinking water supply management area, or it's often referred to as a DWISMA, is managed in a wellhead protection plan, and that's typically by a city. There's a drinking water supply management area vulnerability, and that's a modeling and based on modeling and studies of how likely it is that contamination in the Duisma can reach a public water supply intake. Wellhead protection area is the area surrounding the public water supply wells that contribute groundwater to the well. And then in these areas, the contamination on land surface or anything that gets into the groundwater supply can quickly affect that drinking water supply. And then the emergency response area or areas surrounding that public water supply where water has a 1-year travel time to the well. And they're used to prioritize and manage potential sources of contamination in the Duisma. So it's kind of a nested approach here, where you've got the Duisma, the wellhead protection area, and the emergency response area. That's in green here. This was last updated in 2011, and I'm going to get back to this here later because I think there's an important point that needs to be made about the drinking water supply management area and the wellhead protection plan for the city of Moorhead. There's also a couple models put out by the state. One is the pollution sensitivity of near surface materials, and this models the vertical transmission time it takes water to reach the water table. In the parcel or the proposed site here, that is ultra low, so it's an estimated travel time of greater than 1 year. Thinking if you're just spilling something on the ground and there's no direct path down, it's probably going to take over a year for that to actually seep into the ground and get into the water table. So this suggests that risks from surface spills on this proposed project site are low if addressed quickly. But then you have pollution sensitivity of the aquifer. And so this is based on the estimated travel time for water to reach buried sand aquifers and bedrock surfaces. So this ranges from very high, which is a pretty wide range of hours to months, to high, weeks to years, medium, years to decades. And those are the ratings that are on that proposed parcel. So if you were to go furthest east, it would be very high to high as you go west, and then medium kind of on the western edge of that. Go back here. One of the reasons for this, why it's very high, is the average depth to the aquifer in this area. It ranges from about 17 to 22 feet, so that's pretty close to the surface. And this suggests that contamination risk is high, especially if you have any disturbance of surface materials where you're making direct paths right into the aquifer, like a well, something like that. Considerations from Moorhead Public Service. Though this site is outside the drinking water supply management area, I think it's around a half mile outside, maybe a little less. Aquifer water is being pumped from under and around the subject property, as this property sits right on the Buffalo Aquifer. The current drinking water supply management area and wellhead protection area boundaries were, as I had mentioned, delineated in 2011. And these boundaries are going to be updated as soon as 2022. So in 2022, it's possible that the wellhead protection area or the drinking water supply management area could encompass this property. And I think that's an important consideration or important factor to take into consideration, is that it's possible that this area could be within the wellhead protection area or the drinking water supply management area. It might not, but it's a possibility. One thing too for Moorhead Public Service is that in Clay County, groundwater generally flows in a northwesterly direction. But when you're pumping water, and in this year the city of Moorhead is getting about 40% of its water from the aquifer, It creates kind of a cone of influence where water is drawn down and into the wellhead, and that water in the outlying area is being displaced, so it's moving in and replacing the water that's being pumped, and that's coming from areas even outside that drinking water supply management area. So we,
Is that additional storage, or is that also a recharge area, or for the aquifer?
I might leave that to the water experts to answer that question, but yeah, I think it's just when you're using water directly in and around the wellheads, that water that typically flows northwesterly is flowing towards that space it's filling that void essentially that's left by that water that's being pumped up. Morehead Public Service, a couple more considerations. They're concerned that the approval of this petition can't meet the finding that development authorized by the rezoning will not create an excessive burden on public facilities or utilities. They're a public water supplier, so they're bound by very strict regulations in terms of how water is treated and tested. They have to stay under certain contaminant limits. They treat drinking water from these wells, and this is about 8,000 feet from that proposed parcel. And removing contaminants can be expensive. Could create a burden on the public water supply for Dilworth and Morehead. And as I had mentioned before, about 40% of the water for Dilworth and Morehead this year is coming from the Buffalo Aquifer. There has also been a history of long-term and expensive mitigation efforts, a couple Superfund sites in the area, former gas stations, truck stops. And these have been implemented by MPS because portions of the aquifer are already contaminated. There's also high levels of arsenic in the Buffalo Aquifer, and so wells in the area consistently test above that maximum contaminant limit. Morehead Public Service treats for arsenic. It can be expensive to treat for individual wells, though. Like if you had a house and you drilled a well and you found your well has a lot of high levels of arsenic, it can be expensive to treat that. Red River Valley. So I just want to show you kind of their preliminary plat that was approved by the city of Dilworth. So kind of right on the southwest corner of that intersection with 11 and 15th Avenue North. It's about 6.82 acres. And this is kind of a preliminary drawing of one of their site options. So it would be a building with a few offices, one bathroom, and then a couple of bays for their I think they plan on having 3 to 4 trucks for their line workers out there. They would be stored inside on an impervious surface. So the more information about that site, it's an auxiliary service center. Their primary service center is in Halstead. They plan to design this facility in coordination with engineers to avoid and mitigate potential groundwater impacts. The site will use little water just because they basically would be using it for a bathroom and a sink, essentially. They have a proposed septic being potentially a mound, but I will say that other businesses that are near the aquifer or on the aquifer are required to have holding tanks. So I'm thinking like Titan Machinery to the south, they have a holding tank, so they don't have a mound system or a drain field at all. There is that commercial storage and auto repair facility that's just on the south side of the airport. They also just have a holding tank as well. In terms of transformers, they're not going to be storing any faulty or leaky transformers on site, and any transformers that wouldn't meet EPA requirements, they would have to go to Halstead because that's their where they have their permit from the EPA to kind of store and service those. They don't plan on storing any hazardous materials in bulk on site, and they're not servicing any of their vehicles on site as well, and that includes everything from as simple as an oil change. they'd probably just be maybe washing their vehicles. There's another consulted, talked with the county highway department on access management, just making sure that the minimum access district is, from an intersection is 500 feet. Can be less if the county engineer deems that appropriate. Seems like they would meet that. The average daily traffic for County 11 is about 1,800 cars per day. Based on the proposed use of this parcel, I don't see it going up, having much of an impact on the average daily traffic count. Just some ag considerations because this parcel is prime farmland. And one of the big goals of our current plan is to support the long-term protection of agriculture. Because this isn't a planned urban growth area though, we don't need to maybe consider that as much, but just want to make you aware that it is prime farmland. Some additional considerations is there's about 600 acres of property directly to the south on the other side on the south side of US Highway 10 that's zoned limited highway commercial. It's also zoned urban expansion district tier 2. And of those, about 285 acres are zoned commercial in the city of Dilworth's future land use plan.
Where's that again?
That's just, so this is where they're petitioning for the rezoning, this whole area south of here. So if you go down 336, just on the west side of 336.
Is it south of Highway 10 or south of,
Yep, south of Highway 10.
okay,
Yep,
north of 94?
yep. So the Planning Commission did go through the Clay County Development Code 8-4-6D, the criteria and general review standards for granting or for recommending a rezone petition to the county board. One thing that I told the Planning Commission is that, rezoning parcel is not something to be taken lightly. That's why you as the board have the ultimate authority for doing so. So they have to go kind of through these findings and discuss before they make their decision. The first one being the effect of the proposed use. Just in granting a zoning district amendment that the Planning Commission considers the effect of the proposed use on the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the occupants of surrounding lands, existing and anticipated traffic conditions on adjacent streets and land, and the effect of agricultural usage in the surrounding area. So there was discussion related to conflict with the health and welfare of the occupants of county residents due to potential impacts to drinking water. But after some discussion, ultimately the majority of the Planning Commission thought that the risk of this would be very low just because there's no hazardous material stored on site, minimal traffic generated. Sewage would be a holding tank, vehicles would be stored inside on an impervious surface, and any water use would be minimal, and the well that's drilled would be a certified well. In addition to that effect of proposed use, the Planning Commission has to make some additional findings. First being burden on public utilities, that development authorized by the rezoning will not create an excessive burden on any public facilities or utilities. There's discussion about a potential burden on MPSs because they're the public water supplier for Moorhead and Dilworth. Again, in this case, the Planning Commission kind of made the conclusion that the use is low impact, likely not more than a residence, which would be permitted in the Wellhead Protection Overlay District. The next one is related to overall needs, that the rezoning is reasonably related to the overall needs of the county and existing land use. The discussion was that the proposed rezoning was related to the needs of the county by providing access to electric service to rural areas in western Clay County. Though some of the Planning Commission did express concerns that about public drinking water, safe and clean public drinking water being in need in the county, and any potential impacts to drinking water supply. The next one is consistency with the ordinance, just that the rezoning is consistent with the purposes of the ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant seeks classification. One of the things that was discussed is that the limited highway commercial zoning district allows as a conditional use certain highway-oriented uses in environmentally sensitive areas. So that, the whole point is if you have a highway going through on or near a environmentally sensitive area, whether it be wetlands, groundwater, habitat, things like that, certain commercial uses could be allowed, provided that there are conditions in place that mitigate or avoid or mitigate any impacts to the resource. And there was with the current zoning, though, with the wellhead protection, planning commission members did state that this use was not consistent with the resource protection, wellhead protection overlay district. The main one being that it's, over right on top of the Buffalo Aquifer. There's a higher risk for contamination in the area, and that there would be no municipal hookups to sewage or water. Next one is conflict with the comprehensive plan, rezoning. The rezoning can't be in conflict with the comprehensive plans of any township, city of the county, or the county land use plan. This rezoning would not be in conflict with the city of Dilworth comprehensive plan, as their future land use plan has this area being zoned commercial. The proposed rezoning is not within the current DWISMA or wellhead protection area, though some of the planning commission did state that the proposed rezoning is in conflict with the goals and policies related to the resource protection, wellhead protection overlay district, which is in the county comprehensive plan. And then the last one is prematurely stimulating public investment in utilities. The rezoning will not either individually or cumulatively stimulate prematurely public investment in facilities and utilities. So majority of the planning commission stated again that they thought that the risks to groundwater associated with the proposed rezoning is minimal. Some of the planning commission stated that the public water supplier would be required to do more wellhead monitoring, could be impacted by contaminants and mitigation in the event of a spill. So that could be seen as a premature public investment in those utilities. So at the end of the planning commission meeting, the board chair did ask each planning commission member to one individually kind of give their reasons for why they would support this petition to rezone and why they would might oppose it. There was a motion to recommend denial. That motion failed 7-2. And then there's a subsequent motion to recommend approval, and that passed 7-2. We did get a couple of letters that were received after your packets went out on last Thursday. The first being from the City of Moorhead and Moorhead Public Service. And essentially, I'll kind of let them have the opportunity to go over that, but just basically the request is that to deny this petition to rezone. We also did receive a letter yesterday from our Planning Commission Chair, William Davis, and he was essentially kind of reiterating what happened at the Planning Commission, the discussion, and then that his feelings that this would be a good business to have in Clay County, and that it would be minimal risk, and they would be taking steps to further mitigate any risk. So, any questions for me at all?
Any questions at this time for Matt? I might have some a bit later for you. But.
Okay.
Yes.
Matt, can you explain the difference between that near surface pollution sensitivity map and the aquifer pollution sensitivity map? Because you said in the near surface one, This was in a low area, but then on the aquifer pollution sensitivity map, it's in the very high category. So just explain that difference there.
Yeah, I'll try my best to explain what my interpretation of the difference is, and some of the experts might be able to correct me here, but my thought is, in this part of the country, there's a lot of clay, heavy clay on and near the surface, and it can be a confining layer. It can prevent or slow any type of material, whether it be water or oil or anything that seeping through that thick clay layer. If you're going to disturb that, and so that's why I think it's low at the near surface, just because if we're not going to do anything to disturb that clay, and you were to drop a gallon of water, pour a gallon of water on it, it's going to take a long time to get through that confining clay layer. Now, if you're to do something like punch a well or dig a basement or do something like that, where you essentially reduce the thickness of that layer, confining layer, in combination with the higher water table, that risk becomes higher. Just because the water table is pretty shallow, 17 to 22 feet. So any disturbance that would let that, whatever the substance is, there's just a higher risk that it'll get to the aquifer. Either whether it's a sand aquifer, sand and gravel aquifer, or the bedrock.
A little follow-up to that, because I understand this is farmland
Yes.
currently.
Yep.
When we're saying near surface where that clay material is that below what would be tilled as farmland? So is it already disturbed if it's farmland? Or
I would think that the farmland would be part of it. I personally don't think that the disturbance from ag is really enough to further limit the ability of that clay soil to prevent materials from, or whatever hazardous material or whatever chemicals from seeping in at a faster rate. In my understanding from studies done by the state and from Moorhead Public Service is that agriculture does not seem to have quite a big impact or risk to the aquifer, with the exception of maybe any phosphorus inputs.
Okay.
All right, at this point, the applicant, Red River Valley Co-op, would you care to, if you would, you can either choose to grab a mic there or you can go to the podium, whichever you prefer, but if you would just provide your name and who you're representing.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate this. My name is Rich Whitcomb. I'm the CEO of Red River Valley Co-op Power. I just want to mention real quick, I was doing an annual meeting and my computer did a hard update during the annual meeting and that took 15 minutes, so that's nothing. But just briefly, Red River Valley Co-op is a not-for-profit member cooperative. We've been around for 83 years. We serve the rural areas of and suburban areas of Polk, Norman, and Clay County. So we serve North Dilworth, South Glyndon, around Barnesville and Moorhead, and obviously the rural areas. And that is our mission is simply to provide a high level of service to our electric cooperative members. And as Matt mentioned, we have our main headquarters is in Halstead. Our logistical headquarters is in Halstead, and that will remain. But we've been looking for some time to find the right location in Clay County to plan for growth that we think is experiencing, and to find the right location to do that. And we think we found it with that parcel. So that parcel has fiber, it has good paved roads, it has electricity already available and adjacent. And one of the keys to that location is if there's a blizzard in the winter and we have power out in the rural areas, our linemen can hop on that adjacent paved road and get to Highway 10 and be where they need to go. They can get on I-94 and get where they need to go, or they can get north. So it is a good spot from the perspective of serving the community and providing high-level service. So I just want to highlight a few items that has already been talked about. First, we don't intend to build until probably 3 to 5 years or slightly longer. But again, we've been looking for a long time, and we've identified this parcel as the proper spot to be. The Dilworth Planning Commission, the Dilworth City Council, and the Clay County Planning Commission have either approved our request or recommended our rezoning request. So I just want to reiterate that this project has been vetted by different jurisdictions. We have been in frequent communication with Dilworth, Clay County, City of Moorhead, and the landowner to the north of our plans. And I just want to mention one thing about in that letter that was just sent from Moorhead Public Service. It said in there that they didn't receive notice until August 5th. I just want to point out to the commissioners that I called and gave verbal notice well before I let them know right away of the process that we were doing. So I do want to highlight that Moorhead Public Service did know about this project well before, and we didn't receive any concerns until literally right before the Planning Commission. So as has been talked about, the 6.82 acre parcel is not in the wildlife protection area and is not in the drinking water management area. The parcel will be kept neat, clean, and orderly in appearance. I mean, we're a not-for-profit. If we don't provide service, then we have nothing, and we ought not to exist. We don't service our own vehicles. Matt's already talked about that we don't store any leaking transformers. That is uncommon. All transformers from 1978 going forward are mineral oil. But we have a site for the rare, uncommon occurrence if there's a leaky transformer that has to be tested. That goes to our Halstead site. We have an EPA-approved site there. That will not change, so there's no concern that way. Very little water use. I mean, this is primarily a shop for our linemen who serve Clay County. So currently we have 4 linemen. We might add one in the future with growth, and that's the primary purpose of that location. So flushing of toilets, turning on a faucet, and occasionally washing vehicles to keep them looking nice for the community is really the water use of that site. There will be we would, obviously like to have a heated shop there with concrete. There would be a separator trap drain in that concrete. I guess the basic premise of this is we have an architect and we have an engineer, and they will guide us through that process to make sure we're code compliant. And so the other thing is if we need to do a water retention pond with a clay lining, we can do so. And I think Chris Heyer from Moore Engineering is on the Zoom call, and he can speak to the topography and the need, if necessary, for a retention pond. But we would be happy to do that if that is what is needed or required. And just in closing, we would obviously love to hook up to Dilworth sewer and water, and we will when it's economically feasible. But again, this is the right parcel for us with minimal water use. And in closing, this is just about continuing a high-level service to Clay County and the communities of Dilworth and Glyndon. And we are not for profit with a track record of reliability and service, and I would love to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions at this time for? All right, well, maybe you have an opportunity to answer some here in a little bit. We'll see. City of Moorhead or Moorhead Public Service, I see Mr. Okay, do you want to come up and give your name and?
Morning. My name is Mark Pritchard. I'm the water plant supervisor for Moorhead Public Service. I wanted to start off by noticing that there were, in one of the two letters received by the commissioners, one by Mr. William Davis, I noticed in a quick reading while it was on the screen that there were multiple questions asked and no answers provided. I would like to first address that comment in that letter by saying that there were multiple questions asked and then they were all answered during the Planning Commission meeting. We may not have called out specific businesses that would be coming to mind, but we did discuss different types of businesses, such as ones that did not have any petroleum products being used on a regular basis, or things that had any hazardous materials on site. So we did talk about specific types of businesses that would be suitable for this location. One of the other things that was discussed in that letter was the risks that were supposedly not discussed at the meeting. I would like to offer a few problems that I had with that. One of the risks that we are very concerned about is bacterial contamination into this aquifer system. This aquifer system is, as mentioned previously, extremely shallow relative to other aquifer systems throughout this part of western Minnesota. For example, last year during 2020, the municipal airport, which has a private well for the city of Moorhead, did have a positive bacteria sample that needed state health department mitigation and MPS staff to mitigate. That is one of the primary concerns that we have with private wells within certain proximities to our existing well fields. My staff did end up dropping everything that we were doing at the water plant for that 2-week time frame and assisted in sampling and assisted in disinfecting that well and providing the resources that were necessary to bring it back into compliance. So that's one of the primary concerns that we have with private wells being used for commercial entities within certain boundaries of our Buffalo aquifer. As far as the letter that we sent, I do want to clarify that the August 5th timeframe mentioned here a few moments ago, that was when the Water Division staff became aware that this petition was being requested. So in that timeframe, from the August 5th timeframe on, that's when our Water Division staff began the deep dive into the issues and concerns that we have from a water supply perspective. This is not one electric utility against one other electric utility. This is strictly the Water Division of Moorhead Public Service trying to ensure that we can provide safe and economic services to the communities of Moorhead and Dilworth. If we have unnecessary risks such as a private well used for commercial entities, regardless of how frequently it's used, that provides more potential for contamination because it is not being used. Flowing water means safer water. That's why we had issues with municipal service hookups due to the long distance between existing municipal services and the parcel. We also have concerns with private wells being penetrated into the aquifer because of that bacterial contamination risk. So we did have various concerns. As far as the findings of fact and order, I believe those were discussed pretty well earlier. I would like to say that there would be a burden on public utilities should we begin to rezone this area along 336 in this fashion. We would have to take more frequent spot sampling to ensure that we don't have any contaminants making its way into our well fields, and that would take extra staff time and resources to accomplish. So there would be a negative burden on the existing utilities because we would have to watch out for those things because we are the ones primarily responsible for ensuring safe drinking water to the cities of Moorhead and Dilworth. As far as the conflict with comprehensive plans, I would like to point out that building commercial entities within wellhead protection overlays would be in opposition to various plans such as the Minnesota Department of Health and Moorhead Public Services combined wellhead protection plan. The wellhead protection plan is something that gets updated approximately once every 10 years. When that process takes place, it is a very large communal effort. The last one was accomplished through the years 2011 to 2013, during which that process had Clay County staff involvement, City of Moorhead, City of Dilworth, MPS, Buffalo Red River Watershed Conservancy District, and various others that worked together to make sure that we would properly protect this aquifer. So in years such as 2021, when the Red River is highly unreliable, we have a reliable backup source. That is the reason why that plan is put into place. Over the past 35 years, Clay County and Moorhead Public Service and the City of Moorhead have worked together in various fashions to make sure that we received and found funding for updates to our surface water intake that is currently on the Red River to make it more resilient to droughts and floods. We have spent considerable funds on a new water treatment plant that allows us to treat arsenic and other things that are concerns for the waters in these areas, things that we can't necessarily take out with a private well. And there are other things that we have implemented over time to make sure that the resiliency of our water supply is where it needs to be. So with the petition that we have in front of us here, it may be low risk if we had municipal services to the site. However, that is not the case with the existing petition, and we're a long ways out from having municipal services reach that far east from the city of Dilworth. So that would be one of the primary concerns that we have with this parcel. Had we gone 20 years into the future and the edge of Dilworth was very close, this would probably be a different conversation.
Mark, Commissioner Mojo has a question.
I have a question. How do you maybe justify or prove that municipal utilities are safer than rural wells?
We go through extensive testing that private wells don't have to comply with. A lot of times, if there is a private well, the sampling is up to the owner, and that doesn't have any requirements associated with it. There are over 117 different contaminants that my water utility samples for on an annual basis. One of them is bacteriological E. coli, for example. That's a big one that we watch for contaminants of a bacterial nature. We also look for arsenic. We look for glyphosate from pesticides from agriculture. We check a lot of different things, and private wells don't necessarily do that because it's up to the individual owner to recognize that they may need to be checked for, and it's up to them to go through that process.
So does MPS currently advocate against any other wells within this overlay? Private wells?
It depends. If it's a residential, that's really up to whoever owns the parcel. If it's for a commercial entity, we strongly recommend that we abide by Chapter 5C and make sure that any commercial entity is hooked up to municipal water and municipal sewer services.
Okay, so geographically, the majority of Clay County rural residents are serviced by rural wells, and because this overlay goes all the way to Wilkin County, I mean, we do have a fairly healthy track record with wells that are in existence that have not become these catastrophes that you talk about. So I just want to clarify that for those that may not be familiar with rural wells. I mean, they have to be dug by a certified well digger.
Right, and we're not by any means expressing the statement that certified well contractors wouldn't be able to drill a disinfected well. What happens long-term is if those wells are not maintained properly by an operator who is trained to do so, that's when we have situations where my staff would potentially have to be the ones to go out to the site and drop what we're doing at the water plant and see what we can do to help.
So then one follow-up question, I know we're short, Mr. Chair, but it seems to me that a commercial entity would have more resources to maintain and upkeep a well versus a rural residential. I mean, just from what you're talking about in terms of upkeep, certainly commercial would be aware of that more often, but.
Correct, and again, it would be up to the decision of that individual commercial entity to voluntarily do those checks where, for example, my water treatment system is mandated to check for those things.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gross.
Yes, Mark, I attended the meeting, the planning commission meeting, when you presented your stuff. My question is, what type of construction would you allow on that property? Would you allow residential construction?
Yes, that was discussed at the Planning Commission at some length. One of the other things brought up during that conversation was also what types of commercial entities could be built in this area. And we didn't give any specific names of businesses because that's really a decision that needs a lot more input than just my own. It's something that we're going to need to discuss with the city of Dilworth, the city of Moorhead, Clay County staff. I mean, that's a big conversation to have that I think we do need to have. Again, if this particular petition had been 25 years into the future and we had municipal water and sewer services available to the site, I think this would be a very different conversation. However, because the distance between the borders of the city of Dilworth and where this petition lies is so great, it really represents an issue for Moorhead Public Service, regardless of what route is used for water and sewer services. If it's private, it becomes a potential issue from a contamination standpoint. If it's hooking up to existing services, it becomes a public safety issue because of the extremely long dead-end service. That means that water would be less than ideal getting to the site if it can get there with any kind of disinfectant residual at all.
So if there's a residential service, listening to, been speaking before about how many vehicles they're gonna have there. There's a lot of residents with a big family that have 4, 5, 6 vehicles. They change oil there, they do whatever they, on a residential service out there, they could do all that stuff. I mean, so, I'm looking at this, I mean, a residential service out there would have more contaminants probably than this company would. And my next question is, if we don't do anything in that part of the land, no, there's no development, and it's being farmed right now, and if I go out there and farm and I fill up my fertilizer tank and spill 100 gallons of fertilizer, is there a concern there?
Absolutely, yes.
But we can continue that. I mean, if whoever is farming this now spilled 100 gallons of fertilizer, they wouldn't have to report that, would they?
That is something I'm not sure about. I'm not familiar with what kind of reporting standards there are for farmers. I would hope that there would be something of that nature, but I don't know the answer to that question. Regardless of whether it's reported or not, it would be something that we would, if there is that much spilled, we would most likely see it in one of our monthly samples.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to maybe piggyback off of Commissioner Gross's question, I think that a spill like that would have to be reported to the state duty officer. Whether or not it's reported, probably more likely than not, people don't know to call the state duty officer, so it probably would go unreported.
I mean, even if you don't report it, I mean, you got fertilizers, pesticides going on that land every year. Does that seep down or doesn't it seep down? I mean, if a couple of gallons, they say you did change oil there and spill it on there, you're talking about 3, 4 gallons probably, quarts. I mean, but if you work that land, you're putting a lot more fertilizer on there and pesticides than you ever would by changing oil in a vehicle.
Which they're not doing at this site.
Which they don't even plan on doing. Okay.
Commissioner Kaylee.
With regard to the sewer, I'm just wondering, you're saying that a municipal hookup for sewer would be your ideal situation. Can you tell me what the difference would be in discovering a leak from like a septic system, be it mound, be it a tank, versus a municipal hookup to sewer, which would be found more quickly?
What the difference in procedure would be, or?
Maybe difference in procedure, like what that looks like, yeah.
That's a good question. Moorhead Public Service doesn't supply municipal sewer services. That would be a question that I would refer to our wastewater staff for the city of Moorhead and the city of Dilworth. I don't know what their procedures or policies are. Regardless of what they are, it would be something that we would want to tackle immediately, especially given the close proximity to the water table.
I think it's also worth noting that holding tanks that people put in also have alarms that are equipped on them as part of general policy, and the alarms will be alerted as soon as there's any type of malfunction.
I just got one further comment. I just wanted, for the record, I'm very concerned about the water supply too, because I live in Dilworth, so I know the water comes through there. So my comments are just, where is the greatest concern supposed to be at here right now? So it's not that I'm completely against or for this, but because I'm concerned about the water supply too. But looking at this situation right now, it just seems like they're gonna have a lot less contaminants than the farmer who's presently farming it or a residential place going on there.
I guess I have a few comments here. First off, there was mentioned about the Dilworth growth area, and that would be considered commercial, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And obviously, before that would be allowed to happen, there would have to be municipal services.
That's correct.
I just want a clarification, a couple of clarifications here in reading on page 4 of 52 on the documents that we have here. Kurt Stubbs had asked about clarification required for sewage system, which would be a holding tank. But the proposal right now is a mound system with drain field. Is that correct?
That was the initial proposal, though I believe the applicant is open to
Change that?
to changing.
Okay. And of course, what we're here to discuss right now is strictly the rezoning piece.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's correct, because, and if I may, just one thing about that, that is important to consider is that with a rezoning piece, once it's rezoned to limited highway, if it is rezoned to limited highway commercial, no matter what, if it ends up being, the applicant's proposed use, maybe something happens with that. Once it's zoned that way, it could potentially be a different use that's allowed as a conditional use in that limited highway zoning.
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the process. So let's assume for this discussion that this were to be rezoned. Would the applicant then still need to go back to the planning commission if it is now just highway commercial? Would they have to go back and establish a conditional use permit?
That is correct.
Okay. And in that process, the planning commission could or may not put conditions on that application.
Yes, that is correct.
And under that process, once that's done, does that come back for county board approval?
Once the planning commission kind of has the ultimate authority on granting or denying conditional use permits.
Very good. So there'd be no appeal by anybody in terms of the process to come before this board? If, for
there would
example, if
be an
there was some
appeal process.
concerns about not having enough conditions put in place.
Yeah, that could be challenged, and if the planning commission were to deny the permit, then, and the applicant were to appeal that decision, then it would come to the county board.
But only under those.
That's my understanding.
Right. I just want to make sure I'm aware of
Yep.
future issues, because in this particular process, to this point, there was an approval based on the planning commission for the rezoning, but it had no condition, it had no consideration for conditions.
So it was a recommendation.
Yes,
This
okay,
board,
yeah.
7-2 recommendation.
Right.
Favorably
Yeah,
approving.
yeah, it was a recommendation, but it's important for this board to know that it could be more than a recommendation, because it would require a 4/5 vote to overturn that decision.
No,
Yes.
no.
Am I correct on that?
It requires a 4/5 vote, whatever decision this is,
Yeah.
4/5 majority.
Correct.
Not to overturn the planning,
Yep.
Right, it's a 4/5 vote to,
either.
Either way.
right, either, but if ultimately it was not a 4/5 vote, then it wouldn't be approved.
Yeah, right, that's my point.
Right, true.
All right. I want to just ask I know you want to mention something again. Something that I'd like a little bit more clarification on is the DWISMA.
Can I
And,
just have a comment? This is we have to give everyone equal opportunity to speak. So usually, we ask other people in the audience if they want to speak. We have to be able to, we can't limit anybody now going forward because.
we're going to
Just-
go
okay,
through this. Yeah. The DWISMA, you mentioned there could be concern about that being reviewed and changed.
Yes, sir. The concern that Moorhead Public Service has is that the timing of the proposed construction of this building, should the parcel be rezoned, is 3 to 5 years into the future. By that time, we will have definitive updates to our drinking water supply management areas as part of our state collaboration for the wellhead protection plan. Most of the time, that wellhead protection plan is updated in 2 parts. Each takes approximately 1 year. And we will have the results of that prior to the 3 to 5 year time frame that is being proposed for any type of construction. So that is one thing that Moorhead Public Service has concerns about, because if this model update does yield that the drinking water supply management area needs to change, if it gets larger, it could envelop this parcel, which would make it less than suitable for commercial construction.
Okay, yes.
And I did have one last point. I would also like to bring to the attention of the board that, depending on what the decision is this morning, right now the petition states to rezone from limited highway commercial and remove the wellhead protection overlay. Should that take place, that would effectively make this parcel an island surrounded by non-conforming use. And that's something I wanted to bring specific attention to.
All right, so we've heard from Moorhead Public Service. Any other, would you care to have more time?
Again, Rich Whitcomb, Red River Valley Co-op Power. Everything that the co-op has said, from the Dilworth Planning Commission to Dilworth City Council to Clay County Planning Commission, and now this board, is on the record, so hold me to my word. Thank you.
You have a comment? Commissioner Ebinger.
I just want to, and this is obviously a hard decision to make, but I want to break down what my thoughts of it are. We're taking an area and we're going to make it an island where they can get municipal services before there's an update on the DWISMA. There's a lot of unknowns here. And I think what this boils down to is it's a comparison between probabilities and consequences. The probabilities are that if this building goes up and it's managed responsibly, which I have no doubt it will be, that there won't be any issues. There's a high probability of that. But if there are consequences, there are serious consequences. This is Russian roulette. The probability is nothing's going to happen. You've got 5 empty chambers and 1 that's hot. But if you end up hitting a long shot on that, you've got a catastrophic issue. If nothing came out of this drought that we've just experienced, it's driving home the fact that our water supplies are important. Is it vulnerable in other ways? Sure. But why take an entire section here and open it up to where we can have more businesses before they get municipal services, before we know what the next WISMA update is? This just feels like we're rushing something that we shouldn't rush.
Thank you. I do want to make sure that for the public hearing record, that the memorandum that Matt had provided all of us in its entire detail be submitted as part of the public hearing record, as well as the letter from Moorhead Public Service and the City of Moorhead, a joint letter dated September 2nd. Also be included in the public record, and I'd also request that it's a letter from William Davis, the Planning Commission Chair. It has, I guess there is a date of September 12th on the back, that also be submitted into the record for the public hearing. Do we have any other information that needs to be provided for the public hearing? We have somebody else who wishes to speak.
Morning, Commissioners. Again, appreciate the time to talk this morning. My name is Travis Schmidt. I'm the General Manager with Moorhead Public Service.
And as Mr. Whitcomb alluded to earlier, I was notified earlier, or I should say late in July, of the situation that they were looking at. To be honest with you and be frank, I was thinking it was on 34th Street, on the west side of Dilworth, not at the current location. At that time, it was a verbal conversation, and that's really what it was. I didn't have the information in front of me of the actual physical location. Again, Mark Pritchard has done a great job explaining the technical details of this, talking about the rezoning and the concerns with that, and it just seems like it's unorderly growth. I don't think it's necessary, like Commissioner Ebinger stated. It's imperative that we protect this water resource for generations to come, and whether it's high probability or low probability, we need to keep that wellhead protection overlay district intact for the long term for the cities of Dilworth and Moorhead and those 50,000 residents, plus the greater Clay County residents that utilize that aquifer as well. It's valuable for everybody, and a resource we have that somebody across the river doesn't have. So let's protect it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hendrickson. Good morning.
Won't be long, so thanks for having us. As you can see by that letter, the council and the MPS board is very uncomfortable with this item, so we all signed it. It's just, I think it's an unnecessary risk, and I act as a liaison to the Moorhead Public Service Commission too, so we've been discussing this at length. So, like I said, the Moorhead City Council is not comfortable with this, the MPS board is not comfortable with this, and that's all I want to state. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other?
Water is life too, I was supposed to mention that.
Okay. Do we have any other people who wish to enter into the record any information? No other people? All right. Do we have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Cayley, second by Commissioner Ebinger. And now it's, this also gives an opportunity for discussion amongst the board based on the established record.
You have to vote on the motion.
I guess I just want to give my thoughts. I know some of them did during the hearing. I have a little document here that I sent out to all of my constituents the last time I ran for office. And in that document, it stated that I helped write policies to protect our aquifers, providing for safe, clean, adequate water.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't think you voted, that there was a
Oh.
motion and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought I did. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, okay. Then we, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. I apologize. I got ahead of myself here. So anyway, when I said I helped write that, I was part of the whole process involved with the establishing the wellhead protection overlay district for the Moorhead Wellhead Protection Area. And with that, we established an overlay area for a reason. And that overlay district went before an awful lot of agencies for approval. Dilworth had an opportunity to discuss that overlay area. So did many other entities. We had farmers involved with helping write that, and determining what should be the wellhead protection area, overlay area. That ultimately, when that process was done, that was established into our comprehensive plan, and it was also voted on, and I believe unanimously carried at the time by the Clay County Commission. I support, I do realize that this is, the likelihood of this is minimal. I still see it as a potential risk. I do share a concern about one of the Planning Commission members who, in his comments, had stated that that in this, Kurt Stubb said he shared his impression with, that Moorhead Public feels that there is no reason to place any risk at this location, and however, he feels this request is low risk and wishes the future information for the DWISMA was available now. And I think that's an important component of this, is that if the drinking water area, there's an awful lot that goes into that. That's not just Moorhead Public Service, it's the state that gets involved with that to make sure that all of those regulations and defined map area are in place to protect the water. The fact that we have this proposal that's 3 to 5 years away from construction, it seems to me that we would have adequate time to get those answers and still provide them with their, providing that was done. I would think there would still be time then to, approve a change in that overlay subject to that. I still don't like the fact that we're just making an island. I don't know that that's really a good area, and I do want to point one other thing out, Matt, and that's in your, I believe this is your summary. You state that the proposed parcel is above the Buffalo Aquifer, and most of the tract is on soils that have high risk for groundwater contamination. I take that seriously, and so at this point, I'm reluctant to want to support this. So. Any other comments? Commissioner Cayley.
I'm remembering that West Fargo had an aquifer, and they pumped it dry, and they lost that resource. And so now they have to rely on alternate resources. This is a treasure that we have. Our greatest wealth in Clay County comes from our land and our water, and that is something that we need to protect. MPS is extraordinarily responsible in how they manage what they're using from the aquifer pulling resources from there, and I thank them for that. So I don't worry about that aquifer being pumped dry in the same way that West Fargo situation occurred. However, the bacterial contamination issue could my understanding is, could gum up that aquifer and make it an unusable resource for us if that were to get out of hand. I completely agree with Commissioner Campbell about how this seems rushed. It seems like we should be waiting until we have that new information from the state. If they're not planning to build for 3 to 5 years out, it just seems odd that we are having this request right now. I just want to maybe start a conversation about what would it look like if we said no right now and denied this rezoning, but then invited the applicant back as soon as we had that information, as soon as the DWISMA was updated. There would be no, they wouldn't have to pay their fee again, but we would just take another hard look at this again at that point when we have current information on the wellhead protection areas and how those might shift.
That's probably a question for our attorney. I know in the past, applications that have been denied have a penalty period in which they have to wait to reapply.
I think it's a 1-year period. I have to ask Matt to make sure. I think it's 1 year. They'd have to wait.
But under their own comments, their intentions wouldn't be to build for 3 to 5. So, you know, and I think that we have the ability to waive a future fee. I think we've actually done that before in the past, if I recall correctly, but.
I think the more public is, give us good reasons not to do this, I guess, because of the risk factor. But I think the Red River Valley Co-op is also giving us a good reason. There is no risk factor. All they're gonna build out there's a building and store a few 4 trucks on there. I don't see, I think we're stymieing construction going on in that area. I mean, that corridor, 336 and County 11, has always been destined for commercial. Now we finally got a commercial that wants to go in there, and with very low risk factors, and we plan on saying no. I just don't see that we should be holding up progress. It's something started out there.
Commissioner Kaylee.
I don't think we're stymieing progress because this is an area that they're not looking to expand into. Dilworth isn't looking to expand into for, I think I heard maybe 10 years. They weren't planning to get utilities out there. So they're jumping ahead and then hoping that Dilworth will kind of grow in around them. So it is kind of leapfrogging the plan. And there is a plan for a reason. I mean, we have a planner for a reason, and I think that there should be some weight to that plan, and that we shouldn't just jump ahead because there's a good idea. And I do think this is a good idea, by the way. I love that they want to come in and expand and provide great service to our residents and more efficiently get out into those rural areas. I think that is fantastic, just maybe not in this exact spot. If we could shift to an area that was not a highly sensitive area over the top of our aquifer, I would be 100% behind this. But I really hesitate when we're right on top of the aquifer.
I guess the response to that is, if you look at that aquifer, there's all kinds of construction. Titan Machinery's on top of it. The Moorhead Airport's almost on top of it. This company with low risk factor is not the first company to build on top of the aquifer. It's already been done.
Matt, is Titan Machine and some of those other businesses, are they over that high or very high pollution sensitivity zone? Or are they a little further off?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kaylee, I'm not entirely sure about that. I know that they are on top of the aquifer. I guess I could make the assumption that they would be, but I would have to look at that.
I guess my response to that would be, just because current risks exist doesn't mean we need to introduce new ones. This is something that can be easily built somewhere else. And I understand wanting to be right next to the fiber and the 3-phase power. I mean, that makes your building hook up real smooth. I have a question, Matt. In that planning commission meeting, you discussed, well, what if they would set the building back to an area of a lower sensitivity? I think you said that if they moved the building and accessed it from a different road. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering that clearly. What was your suggestion?
Yeah, there was Mr. Chair and Commissioner Kaylee, there was some discussion about how if you were, and I can zoom in on this a little bit so it's easier to see. So if we were to look at the proposed parcel, the blue here is high, the green is medium, and then the purple, I believe, is low. Yes. So even just moving it further to the west would pose less of a risk. You'd be on a gravel road, but still not too far from.
And then,
But in terms of this rezoning request, it's for this specific.
it's just for that piece.
Yep.
Yeah, that was my next question, if it's that whole triangle or rectangle or just that one piece.
Just this piece.
Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Matt, how many registered businesses are within a half mile or mile? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I would say somewhere between 5 and 10.
Okay, thank you. And are those businesses that have existed for a while?
Yes.
So could the argument be that this isn't leapfrogging when there's an existing business pool of 6 to 10?
I suppose that argument could be made. A lot of that development is around that Highway 10 336 interchange. When considering things like leapfrogging development and even spot zoning, I think what you really have to consider is the current plan and that going forward. So.
And I think just to maybe, for the folks that may be watching, a half mile in the city limits of a town is far. In terms of our rural areas, a half mile is really not a great deal of distance.
Just to follow up to that question, those businesses would have been in existence at the time that the wellhead protection project was started and implemented, and they would have been had to be grandfathered in the overlay district.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Gross.
I have one question on the other side on the east side of 336, there's a gravel pit there. And isn't that where Moore had dumped a whole bunch of dirt from the underpass from 21st Street? Weren't they allowed to dump a whole bunch?
Strata did store their contaminated soil at that pit, yes.
Wasn't that allowed, and then Moore is the one who dumped all that dirt on there?
Well, we better allow them a chance to respond to that then.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I asked the City of Moorhead engineering staff, they assured me that soil was not contaminated, and each soil load that was taken to the site was tested and found to not have petroleum contaminants. So if they were dumping petroleum-laced soils into that area, that is something that needs to be addressed immediately. Because we were
All
told
that
was
land
not taking place.
with drains going on top of it didn't have any contamination in it.
Could you repeat that, please?
All that land that they hauled out of there didn't have any contaminants from trains.
That I was told that they were digging deep enough where the petroleum-laced soil was taken to a different location. This material was supposedly from 30-plus feet down beneath the soil surface.
Yeah, okay.
I saw your hand. I want to give you an opportunity, and we need to shut this up, but please come up again and, yeah.
One of the things I've been contemplating during this hearing is everybody's talking about hypotheticals of things that could. I guess I don't understand the hypotheticals so much with respect to bacterial and all this. There's probably 50,000 touch points in Moorhead where water could contaminate an aquifer. We're one touch point where we are a responsible, not-for-profit cooperative with a track record of serving rural citizens. We have to do and go what's best for our members. So it's hard for, it's not exactly easy to find willing people who want to make transactions. It's just not easy to find ideal locations, and so we were very thorough and thoughtful with what we did. So again, I appreciate the extra time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. As members of the Planning Commission, we are challenged with hearing situations based on what they are currently, hearing what a plan may be, and then if there are issues that come out of that plan, how do we mitigate or not mitigate to approve. And after hearing the concerns with Moorhead Public Service, our planning chair asked Moorhead Public Service what the major issues tended to be in regards to this plan and to see if we could mitigate it with conditions. And it really was the opinion of the entire board that in terms of the well and septic tanks, those two major issues could be mitigated through proper conditions. At any point, whatever happens with this parcel of land, it will have to go through a full open hearing process, and conditions will have to have been added. I am in full understanding what the repercussions are of our natural resources. If any member of this committee understands that, I obviously would, as serving on the state board or state AMC policy committee for environment and natural resources. I've also been part of lots of conversations on how do we continue to foster healthy growth within Clay County. And it is concerning to me that we have a thoroughfare that really would be, as Dilworth plans, a great corridor to bring opportunity to Clay County, to help our tax base, to help our citizens. But because it doesn't fit within what Moorhead Public Service views as what the protections are of the aquifer, it won't be allowed. I really do feel that we have the opportunity here to make sure that parameters are in place to allow a change, but to also protect it with conditions. I do disagree with the wholeheartedly with the statement that this is it would be a negative burden on utilities. As someone who lives in Clay County that has gone for days in the middle of the winter without electric service because all of our lines have been broken, I understand there are parts of rural Clay County that getting electricity connected is imperative in 30-degree below zero weather. I mean, it's hard to understand that when you don't live in the country. It's hard to understand that when you live in front of a paved road, there are gravel roads that are inaccessible, and that's the point that we're talking about here. A utility company needs to be on a frequently accessed road to make sure that we're getting services to our citizens as soon as possible. I think that it's important that we continue to discuss how we deal with our natural resources. I understand that the DWISMA is coming later, but we always have to make decisions based on the information that we know. And yes, we can act today, and in a year, they may have the DWISMA, that's fine. That can go into account whenever there's an application that needs a conditional use permit.
Any further comments?
I guess I would just like to, the Dilworth City Council has approved this plan. The planning commission voted 7-2 to approve this plan. And now we're being asked, do we approve this plan? I mean, we're looking at all these people saying, no, you didn't have all the facts. We do. That's it.
Commissioner Kaylee.
All of Moorhead City Council opposes this plan. All of the Moorhead Public Service Commission opposes this plan. This is not just a MPS versus this plan. There's other entities that oppose this plan. And like I said earlier, I think it is a great idea. I love the expansion, just not in this spot. And I might change my mind later when I have more information, when that DWSMA is updated. And so I think that's the direction that we need to go.
Commissioner Gross, just in response to your question that they approved it, they approved modifying something that had spent a couple of years in the process of planning and making protection areas for the purpose of water. And from that standpoint, I also want to address some rural areas. There's a lot of people in rural areas that don't have to depend on a source like Moorhead Public Service that deals with thousands of residents in terms of their adequate water supply. A lot of the ones in rural areas, they have their own wells, and whether they're tested or not, we don't know. We have no control over that. So I'm kind of, my position here is I'm kind of looking out for the needs and the safety of the people in these two large communities. And I guess I don't need to repeat myself anymore. Commissioner Ebinger.
Yeah, I need to close that again. This is simply looking at a situation that we're rushing into. This is developing an area, and it's basically undermining the overlay we have for our aquifer in order to approve a project that will take place a year or two after we get the information we need. I don't see the rush. I do see an awfully good reason to maintain the integrity of our of the measures that we put in place to take care of the aquifer.
Thank you. Did you have?
I'm just going to make a motion to approve the removal of the overlay.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Kaylee.
Just a clarification. So we would need 4 votes one way or the other on this. Is that how that works?
That's correct. Brian, do you want to?
From the Clay County Development Code, action for approval by the board for any amendment or rezoning shall not be less than 4/5 vote of its members.
And so this motion right now would be to amend. So that would require four votes. All right. Any further discussion on the motion?
That's the roll call vote.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
So, Mr. County Attorney, what does that,
The motion would fail.
the motion to
Motion to.
rezone fails?
Correct.
All right. All right. We're going to just keep moving.
So I have a question. Because technically, that's not a denial. Then do they have to spend the entire year before they come back and apply?
I mean, I'd have to look at it again, but I believe it's 1 year before they can apply
Okay.
again. I mean, the
But was
denial-
that technically a denial?
I would say it is. I mean, I'd have to look at it to make sure, but I would say once the board has voted and they voted it down, that is a denial. It's a denial of the amendment, so the board voted to not amend. So I believe it's 1 year. I have to, I mean, I don't have it right in front of me to read exactly, but I believe it's 1 year.
That would be, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, that's my interpretation of it. If it doesn't pass, they have to wait a year.
All right. Thank you all for your involvement and your information. And we will now move on. According to our county attorney, the motion did fail on a 3-2 vote. So let's go to our 9:45 item. Accept bond offers and adopt resolution for 2021-40 for general obligation capital improvement project bonds and a resolution 2021-41 for general obligation solid waste revenue bonds. And have Shelley is here with us this morning. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning.
Steve, you want to come up, or, I mean, Kirk, do you want to come up, or, what, we're gonna do the, let's do the, what order did we have them here? The capital one first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Shelley, for being here this morning in person. It's nice to see you. As the board's aware, we've certainly been working through two different bonds with Ellers over the last few months through this process. We have a capital improvement bond and also a general obligation bonds for our solid waste resource recovery facility. Over the last couple of weeks, Lori and I have been working with Ellers, where bonds recently went out for sale, and yesterday Ellers did open those different bonds, and so we'll have Shelley provide some information there.
You should have in your, maybe not in your packets, but provided the day of sale reports that summarize the results of the bond sale. And for the capital improvement plan bonds, the general obligation capital improvement plan bonds, we received 5 bids. And this bond is to finance the expansion and renovation of various county facilities, so that, remember what this one is for. The county staff did go through their favorite thing in the whole world, and that was a bond rating call with Standard & Poor's. It's always so much fun. I enjoy it because I get to hear all the great stuff that's going on in the county. I don't know that they enjoy it quite so much because they do spend a lot of time prepping, and it's kind of like an open book test in college, you know. But you do have a copy of that report in that pre-sale or that day of sale report. S&P did affirm the county's AA rating, which is very, very good. And we're not seeing a whole lot of changes in ratings. If anything, we're seeing downgrades because of the COVID situation and the economics and that type of thing nationally. But good news is that it was affirmed, and I can highlight a couple of things that they brought out. And one is that your economics are strong. You've got good, strong budgetary performance, very strong flexibility. So those are good things. Those are things you have under control that you, through policies and procedures and your decisions, you can control, and all of that is good. There's one, the adequate management. There's a few things in policies and procedures that could be tweaked, but I don't know that that in and of itself is going to lead to an upgrade. And it's just a matter of maybe putting some formal policies in place instead of the informal policies that the county has. Basically, to get an upgrade, the economic metrics have to increase. And again, that's nothing that the county really has control over. A downgrade, if your budgetary performance over the long term were to start worsening, or your flexibility were to worsen, and that you do have control over. In my history with the county, I don't see that happening, but because y'all are very responsible, and each year you budget very conservatively. So that's just kind of an overview of that report. You're welcome to take a read if you can't sleep at night, and it'll put you right down.
So the short now of this is that our rate was very good.
Your rate is very good. You're doing a good job. And it's stable, which means they see that out into the future for 2 years unless something catastrophic happens. So yes, you got a AA on your test.
Lori, can I ask you a question? On this particular one, what did, in our preliminary budget that we have presented, I see numbers here of our fiscal totals for the payments on these at right around between 504 and 510,000. What had we budgeted?
We had 579,000.
Oh, okay, so we gained a little there.
Right.
Okay, that's good, okay. I'm gonna try to.
Okay.
We're behind by an hour, so I'm gonna try to, unless there's questions here amongst the board, I would be looking for a motion to adopt resolution 2021-42.
I would move to adopt resolution 2021-40, is that what we just said?
2?
20, yeah.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kaylee, second by Commissioner Ebbinger. Any further discussion? That's pretty much what we need now, those two resolutions pass, right, from your standpoint? Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We will now move into resolution 2021-43.
This one is on the
Solid waste.
solid waste revenue bonds. You received many bids, very, very many bids. They came in very low, and the annual is between 648,000 and 650,000. And that's all. Unless you have other questions.
I just want to clarify, Colleen, did we have this as 43? Did we have these as two separate? Or 40? Oh, yeah, this one is 42. This one is 42. The other one was, now I'm confused. Yeah, capital was 42, and so this one should be 43. All right. So, and again, we have really good ratings, and if we look at the fiscal payment amounts, we're a little bit over on this compared to,
We had 650 in the budget.
well, we had 650 in the budget.
Yep.
Yeah, so we are under in all years except, every year we're under.
And both of these had a premium bid, and after discussion with Auditor Johnson and Administrator Larson, they determined that they wanted to keep those premiums. Often in the past, you've reduced your par amount by that amount, but because it came in within the budget, they were able to keep the premium that can be used for a project, and if it isn't, it can go and reduce the bond payments.
Yeah, so and the total premium on each one had its own premium, correct?
Correct.
And so those, it basically gives us a cushion.
That's exactly
the
right.
construction.
We decided that
it would be best to keep the premium because of the volatility of building and construction,
And we did that same thing when we did our other major
the jail,
projects.
exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right, so did we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve this.
Okay, we have a motion on,
Second.
motion by Commissioner Moschel, second by Commissioner Ebinger on the bond sale for the solid waste series 2021B. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
To see y'all.
Good to see you.
I think we were supposed to be at 40 and 41. I think we might have to clarify the record for those
Pardon?
numbers.
Yeah.
I think we have to clarify.
Colleen?
Colleen, I think we're just gonna have to clarify the record. The general obligation should have been 2021-40, and the general obligation bond that we just did would be 41. Okay, all right, just for the record, I think I misnumbered them. All right, so, we got Kirk here, and we wanna try to,
I'll be very brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and sweet
Essentially,
here.
what we have before you today is we'd like to revise the service fee and the tipping fee. As you remember from previous discussions, the service fee is the amount of money that basically goes on our property taxes, and the service fee basically pays for all the capital equipment that is used for our solid waste department. The tipping fee is basically is what it costs to dump your material out at the landfill or the transfer station. And that tipping fee actually pays for the operating cost of the solid waste activities. What I'd like to do is just basically have two items if we could, or two actions if we could. The first action I'd like to talk about is the service fee. The service fee is in this particular thing that Steve has handed out. Essentially what we'd like to do is we'd like to raise the service fee by $3 per single-family home, and then the percentage is also going to be raised for the other items that are listed on the sheet here. That works out to be about 7% increase. As I said, the service fee has not been increased in probably 15, 20, 25 years, so I think there's a real need for that, especially with the cost of equipment going up the way it is. So with that, if you have any questions related to the service fee, I stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
and that increased fee will cover all of the capital costs associated with solid waste, including the bond payment, what we just now see is about $650,000 a year that we never had before, so I think a $3 a year increase is a pretty low amount to, if we hadn't had that, we wouldn't really be having to have this discussion. But we
Yes,
have to
that's
come up-
true,
we have to
Mr.
come up with the bond payment.
Yeah, the equipment, as we've talked about previously, is just getting prohibitively high. Compactor is about a $700,000 item, and we're going to be needing to buy one of those here in the next couple of years. So obviously, this is a prudent thing to do.
Again, the capital expenditures that this would cover would be the bond payment, it would cover our investment into Prairie Lake Solid Waste. It covers our annual internal service fund payment for all of the equipment that you didn't describe all of them, but there's several pieces of equipment that we need to keep on a rotating basis for replacement. And it also then incorporates a $200,000 transfer from the capital fund to the operational side to compensate for some of your admin costs and those types of things that can help. And then that will also then help buy down your next subject, which is going to be the tipping fee issue.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
But I think maybe if we're good with that, and again, this is an enterprise fund, and this is something that does require us to give advance notice to everybody involved.
Yes, I didn't mention this, but both the service fee and tipping fee will be increased the first of the year. So we'll have an opportunity to let folks know.
Is there any question on the proposal for this portion of the funding for solid waste? Do you have a motion to approve the rates, proposed rates?
Motion to approve the proposed rates?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kaylee, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Okay, now we'll go into your,
Okay, the second item, as we've talked about, is the tipping fee. The tipping fee pays for the operational cost. What we're proposing is that the tipping fee will be raised from $50 a ton to $53 a ton. I've listed all the increases on the last column on the sheet that's been passed out. The only ones that we aren't raising at this point in time are the tires. We're paying Liberty Tire to take care of our tires, and that's basically the cost that we're paying them, so we're not making any money on that. It's, we're charging the public essentially what we're charged. One additional item that we've included in this, we have an individual drop-off for municipal solid waste. Essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be charging $4.28 per half cubic yard. What the folks out at the landfill asked is, we talked about trying to do it per bag, but they thought it'd be cumbersome to do that, so what they like to do is just do it by cubic yard instead, so that's what we have here. I should point out that last year we were going to raise, we were talked about raising the tipping fee $5 a ton, and we talked about raising the tipping fee again this year, $5 a ton. The reason we did not raise the tipping fee last year was because of COVID. We were really concerned about it. I do think that the $3 is a modest increase, and I think it's something that's pretty positive and needs to be done. I should point out also, we've talked to Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Campbell on both these items, and so it's been pretty well vented.
Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks for mentioning that we really have had substantial conversations in how to address the need in terms of needing to increase the tipping fee, but do it as phased in as possible so that other municipalities have the opportunity to budget for it. And I feel like it's a fair increase based on what our costs are. So I would make a motion to approve.
Motion?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Gross.
Oh.
Further excuse me, Commissioner Ebinger, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? I will just, I will point out too that originally, there was a potential, in originally looking at this, that number could be $10 a ton. After digging deep into this, we felt that the 3 for 2022 is appropriate. And we'll have to look at further considerations, after that, depending on how this all pans out. We're gonna have some new things going on. We're taking over some expenditures and operations that the city used to do in terms of transporting to Perham. We've incorporated that into our plan, and by the way, this has all been vetted through our SWAC group, and they didn't get an opportunity to weigh in on this 3%, but they did all suggest that we try to keep it as low as possible. So, with no other comments, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Things are going kind of slow at the construction site. The rain has kind of slowed things down. As we've talked to Commissioner Mojo and Campbell, we've kind of joked, the farmers wished we would have started the concrete pouring a little earlier, so it could have gotten some rain, but we'll get her done here at some point in time. Thank you. Bye.
All right, we are on to, I want to make sure I haven't skipped over anything. All right, our 1025 item. Continued budget discussion. Stephen Laurie.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This last week, Lori and I continued with the budget information for this board. I think as we talked last week, it's been a little bit different this year. Normally, we have our insurance numbers locked in at this point, but with the RFP process, we're still going through that process. Having said that, this last week, we provided you a couple of different options in the budget, with the lowest one with a net levy increase of 5.4%, and that again reminding you guys utilized a savings of roughly $1 million of insurance, and then utilized $500,000 of fund balance. And so after that presentation, the response was for us was to get that down lower. This past week, we went back to our department heads during management and encouraged them to look at their budgets. We did have some minor movement, but probably limiting the impact of the levy. And we also looked at utilizing an additional $250,000 from fund balance, making that $750,000 in addition to the other adjustments that we've mentioned. And so I would note on your board, or on your front of you this morning, that we had additional information provided of the levy documents. The first two, if you recall last week, we also had 3 additional requests that came before this board from the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber in the IGNITE program, the Downtown Moorhead Inc. program, and then also MetroCog, Metro Housing Needs Analysis. And so you have 2 documents in front of you. The first document is all the information that you had this past week, except for we added the additional $250,000, making a total of use of fund balance to $750,000, and that had our net levy increase down to 4.73%. The second document took that all into consideration, but also added all 3 of the requests that were before the board, and I know the board hasn't made that decision, and we're looking for your insight today on moving forward with some of those. But with the additions of the 3 requests and the $250,000, the net levy increase was 5.15%. So
If we were to keep those.
if you were to keep all 3 of those. And lastly, before we maybe move into the discussion purposes, one of the new requests had Cecilia Amadou, the Regional Director of Extension, presenting a request to move their current staffing plan is at 2.5 FTEs, and their ideal situation would be moving from 2.5 to 3.5. And that was what the additional cost is, what in the new request was to move to 3 full-time people. But they're also, they gave us other options of 2.75 and also 2.8 FTE.
Well, we're currently, I need to.
You said 3.5, it's not,
Excuse me, 2 point.
At the most, they would want 3.
3, sorry, I apologize, Mr. Chair. So, yes, so 2.5 to 2.75 and 2.5 to 2.8. And then the third option, which is in your budget packet, is 2.5 to 3. What I did try to do is that the requests include an intern within their ask, in addition to those the FTE positions.
And Commissioner Moschel.
Thank you. I just need a clarification for me. We have the AFNR, which is Randy's, and then the 2 4-H extension educators. In 2021, the AFNR was $98,642. The $85,000 going forward. Can you tell me what the degree?
My understanding is what the extension does is they take all of the positions that are throughout the state and they add them together and divide it out equally throughout the different regions. And so one region doesn't necessarily take the brunt of an extended employee who's been in that position for a long time.
Okay, so stick with me here. So if we were to keep, instead of giving up what that amount would be and just benchmark it in and then reduce the intern, we'd still be able to increase that halftime position without much effect on the levy, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mojo, because yes, it would offset it, but because we've already factored in the levy increase based on the new number rather than the 215,519, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't see as much of a savings from that perspective. But
If you're comparing this year to last year, yes, but since we've already factored that in, it would be minimal.
I guess I'm not understanding that. I'm sorry.
So last year, I think what you're saying is if we took last year, the regular salaries was 215,592. This year it's 206,424. And because the levy amount of either the 4.73 or the 5.15, that number is based, that 206 is based off those numbers.
What's in the budget? What's in this proposal? Is it 3.0 people, or is it
It's
2.75? What is it?
in the 206 is the 2.5.
Okay, so where I'm at is I'm looking at, let's just I have this sheet that you gave us during budget discussions, and
Yep.
it talks about increasing that 0.5 to a 0.75. The original 2021 with an intern was 2019-784. If you take out the intern, you subtract $6,000 from that. So it's getting up to at least a 0.75, closing that gap. I understand that you're talking about already in the budget. I mean, really, this is a cup game, just shuffling around things. From someone who is almost to a point painfully involved with all different levels of 4-H at the state level, but also at the county level, Clay County is seeing a substantial growth with the amount of youth that are actively involved, and almost mimics what we've seen in prior years when we did have an adequate staffing volume. What is also happening is because we have such a growth in that, we're seeing a decline and a burnout in our volunteer base that is really making the growth happen. And that's because there isn't the staff available to adequately support what is existing currently. And this board so often has the opportunity, unfortunately, to deal with some of the negative issues that are happening in society and spending money to help mitigate and help in those areas. This is an opportunity for us to spend money to address the needs that we're seeing that are positively happening in our community. These individuals, with the replacement of the intern, I think, would be able to, in every single school district in Clay County, help with important programming. And so I think if we can tweak it there, I would certainly personally approve of some of the increase. I'm not quite sure where the numbers align yet, but that's just me.
Just to follow up on that if I can. So on the same attachment G that we're looking at here, the 2022, if we stayed where we're at, the number would be 206,424, leaving 6,000 in for the intern, right? Am I reading that right?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
And then if we go from 0.5 to 0.75, it would go to 225 and 229 and 244 respectively. I think I've heard Commissioner Mozo suggest that maybe if we're gonna increase that, that maybe we could reduce the intern, right? Is that what I'm getting at, what you're suggesting?
Right, but I'm also struggling with that 206 number because we're currently spending 219.
Right,
Yeah,
but
but
what they
again-
did,
I know.
the number they gave us, they spread it across the
I know.
state, so.
I'm just saying.
So that we actually got a reduction in one position based on average statewide. So in any of these green numbers here, we could subtract, so for example, going from 0.5 to 0.75, we could, if we left out the intern fee, we would pretty much be where we were at last year, going from a 0.5 position to 0.75, still gaining some ground. And then if we go to 0.8, we'd be looking at, a slight increase, leaving out the intern. You'd be looking at 223, 508 versus 219. So I guess I'm, you know, Commissioner Gross and I in the PIC committee, we had heard presentation on this, and we never gave a formal, we wouldn't give a formal recommendation on this particular one. We just felt that it should come to our board, and we had too many unanswered questions based on the presentations that had been provided to us, and so I guess to move forward, okay, but to move forward, you know, maybe we should, well, we have a few things to talk about, but Commissioner Kaylee,
Just a question about that intern. How many hours a week is an intern working? Because I would hate to, you know, trade off.
I don't know hours per week, but that intern helps out in the office from the middle of June until about the middle of August. So it really helps with some of the programming during the summer, but also during the fair. But because of this trends that we're seeing, I think that they could tell you that they didn't have a very good attendance rate for their day camp, so a lot of planning went into that, and it just didn't become fruitful. Not that it's not a great thing. I think the one intern will continue because the Federation pays for an intern. It would just be bolstering the full-time or the existing employees.
Okay.
all right,
So just one clarification, if you might. So then, based on that AFNR position, the state is absorbing $13,642 of that salary, correct?
Well, not necessarily. It's just that they must have had some retirement statewide, so they've got new people coming on at a lesser salary. So when they take the statewide salary and divide it amongst all the agents, their overall salary is less.
They probably had
Average
some,
salary
they
is-
probably had some long-term people retire, replaced with.
They did that during COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that would explain that.
Right.
It's kind of like when we go from somebody who might be a 25-year employee retires and we come in with somebody.
Right.
So it's not that they're being paid less, our people, it's just that our share of what they're being paid got reduced.
They're still getting, you know, I mean, they're gonna be getting what they've been getting before, plus probably a cost of living even, but. Okay, so again, now and I like the 4.73 versus the 5.15, but I mean, you can suggest something else. But just to going back to that one, the 4.73, Lori, does that include us keeping extension at the 2.5?
Yes.
Okay, so that has the 206 in it.
It's got the 206.
Okay, good, okay. I just want to make sure we're comparing apples for apples. I want to go back to, if I can, I want to talk about 2020, and I appreciate the fact that we looked at moving $750,000 from 2020 to what we had in 2020, I think, was about just shy of 1.2 million. Right, in revenues over expenditures. My thought process on this is that, you know, we budgeted with the intent that we're going to spend that money.
I have a quick correction, two corrections, actually.
Okay.
The extension, we've got the 206 plus a new request.
So the new request, did you put in the half, or what did you put in?
That is the 0.5.
Full? Okay.
And then for the revenues over expenditures, we ended up with a net of, we were about 2 million, but 1.2 million of that is actually CARES money that we actually paid out to local area businesses right away in January. So the actual revenues over expenditures really was about 800,000 for the general fund.
Okay. And then we can probably anticipate something in 2021 as well.
Hopefully.
Well, we always do. But I guess my thought on that is you know, we're in this time of, you know, we talk about COVID and the stress that everybody has had, and on things we need to try to buy this down, and I would propose that we look at increasing that 750 to even 950 or 1 million. But I also, and it's something that we had talked to, and maybe 950, because I also, what I talked about here in a previous meeting in regards to our insurance, I think we could take another portion of that and start reserving that for, we're gonna be deciding here shortly on where we're gonna be going with insurance, but I think the insurance committee, as we've talked about that, and Steve's talked about it, come 3 or 4 years, and Darren's talked about it, we might be in a position to go self-insurance. And I think it would be wise on our part from a financial standpoint to start putting some money away for, if we do that, that we have funds available to cover expenditures or claims before the premiums come in. And that sometimes can be a hefty amount.
Right.
So I think we should do that, and then in the event that we wouldn't go to the self-insurance, we would then be having those monies available to help buy down future higher rates that's not currently guaranteed, that would help both the county and our employees to establish some sort of rate protection in the future. And I think this is a golden opportunity for us to do that in a year where we've had some revenues over expenditures. I expect that we're gonna see some more by the end of this year. Maybe in my 18.5 years or 19 years on here, I've seen 1 year where maybe we didn't. So I'm comfortable in, and I would suggest that to this board, that we do that we have them come back again with going from 750 to 950, and then reserving, just in our plan, reserving another 200 over and above that would go in to start this fund, Lori.
We did run a scenario like that. Do you have that number?
Let's see. 950.
It would end up being, if we did the 200, actually 250 is what I did in the scenario.
An additional
It was
250?
about 5.3%. It would jump it up to 5.3 if we took the 950 and then reserved the 250.
Why would it jump it up?
Well, if we're adding another 250 in to reserve for that.
Well, I'm.
So if we're using 950 of fund balance plus another 250.
No, I'm talking about 950 from fund balance and then another 200 from fund balance.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So that wouldn't raise it, it would lower it. So so whatever 200 or 250,000 would do to lower that would lower that net 4.73 to something closer to 4.
Okay.
Right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's about 0.75, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, and I'm a little bit more comfortable there, and then we still have to have the discussion on the new requests, on these other external ones, that we're probably gonna have to have some guidance on, because I'm hoping we can set this Steve, are you gone on the final?
No, I'll be here now, Mr.
Okay, so we have another 2 weeks yet, right?
Right, and those don't need to be finally set. We just need to have a preliminary levy, which we can always adjust, closer to the end of the year,
My favorite.
which we did last year.
We did adjust it. I think that was the first time ever. But so how does the board feel about that discussion regarding using more of those revenues over expenditures from 2020 to help reduce? Are we good with that?
I certainly feel like it seems to be appropriate. The conversation that we always have at this board kind of revolves around the unknown on that piece, so it might help in future planning, but I think it's a good point.
Frank, how about you? Are you okay with that? Okay. Good?
I very much support putting money aside, in particular for that and self-insurance
Okay.
in the future. Mhm.
And then the idea of going from 750 to, I'm thinking 950, Lori. And that's just whether it's 950 or $1 million, I think we're gonna be okay either way, but maybe Steve, just do that, adding another 250 out of reserves.
Yeah.
And then 200 on the plan for
Okay.
fund, okay? And then, so then And so that number now, that 4.73 would go down to somewhere around 4 based on this, but that did not include any of these, the Chamber Ignite, the Downtown Morehead Inc., or the MetroCog.
They are in there.
Oh, they are in there.
So that would be 4.47 with all of those requests in.
The new,
With the,
adding another 250?
Yep.
Okay, so it would be 4.47 with those in. All right, and so we have to have the discussion on these other new items.
Well, I can just piggyback off my comments on the MetroCog piece. I certainly feel that because of the reallocation with the census and the benefit it will supply Clay County, I think that the effect of the $5,500 request will be quite minimal. I think it was maybe $1,000.
So you're suggesting that one stay in?
I think that that's an appropriate.
Our consensus for, I mean, for now, just, I'm looking for a consensus here so that we can come with a, we're good?
Yeah.
Downtown Morehead Inc., I'm gonna talk to that one. I firmly think that was a well-presented case, and I think that one is well worth it.
If I can,
Commissioner Ebinger.
and working with the EDC on the board, I think we need to look at this thing in kind of a holistic manner. And we're looking at some things that are more directed towards the needs on the Minnesota side. And if we can do that, fine. If not, I would like to bring this on and possibly look at reallocating some of the EDC funds. Pretty high. I think we need to continue to have a relationship with the EDC, and we need to pay for that relationship. I think we benefit from it as being part of the partnership on both sides. But I was very impressed with the Minnesota side that we got from downtown Morehead. The MetroCog is essential. And the Chamber Ignite is, I think it was something we were all impressed with when we saw it. And if we need to realign our expenditures on that, I think we need to look at it with possibly looking at the MetroCog 110,000 as something we redistribute.
I think you raised some good points, Commissioner Avery. I think on the Downtown Inc. one, on the comments I'm hearing, I think that's deserving to stay in, because it also, based on our questions and comments, it would benefit our other economic development areas and our other communities within the county. And so I do think that's worthwhile. In terms of what you were talking about with the Greater Fargo Morehead EDC, what's the current amount that we have in there?
110.
Or 110, Mr. Chair.
You know, and maybe what we ought to do is, you know, we just had a census deal redone, and based on our formula for other things, our numbers went down. Maybe we should look at something in that regard too, from a standpoint of where the majority of the new growth is. It's not necessarily from a percentage standpoint in Clay County's favor. I mean, we grow, but not to the extent that Fargo and West Fargo have grown, you know, and so our cooperative share maybe we could look at that. And I'm gonna, so I think, you know, if we're okay with the consensus-wise, we should leave that downtown money in. Good? Okay. And then the Chamber Ignite one, that came in pretty late in the game here. They gave a really good presentation, and there's an awful lot of good there. I question the funding on that, and they're anticipating a lot of funds from other agencies that haven't committed yet. And I'm a little bit leery on that one at this point in time in terms of that request this late in the game. The programs and everything were great. I don't know that we've had an opportunity to determine how the 50,000, how we would get our return investment on it. And that's something that Commissioner Cayley and I had a chance to talk about. So I guess, you know, I'm open to hear your guys' thoughts. I know Commissioner Moser, you would like to chime in on that one.
Thank you. I, in reviewing all of this, have thought, what's the best equation to help support healthy growth within our county and our region? And we did have fantastic presentations, and I've had conversations just last week, we had a meeting with Matt Jacobson for our planning comprehensive plan on economic development partners. And there were a lot of agencies at the table, a lot of Clay County agencies at the table. And I agree. I think the Downtown Moorhead Inc. piece makes great sense in terms of allowing or bolstering a position that will help the Minnesota side and help us with legislation in St. Paul. I sometimes wonder, I'm not sure if Clay County gets a loud voice at some of these other tables. And I'm not saying that, in jest, but I think it happens sometimes where a North Dakota side might be promoted more than a Minnesota side for whatever reason. So I think we have to look really carefully at the allocation that we continue to give. I do think that making sure that you look at the allocations because of the census makes a lot of sense. I think that all of our different organizations should be doing that to make sure we're all paying our share shake. But I struggle with if we approve the Ignite request, which I think is $50,000 for 2 years, right?
Well, it's 50 a year, isn't it?
50 a year.
50 annually for 2 years. We're not paying anything to the Barnesville EDA, and they're doing great things. They've had businesses come in that help Clay County, and so yes, we should continue to do what we're doing, but we also need to maybe pare down what we're spending with the $110,000 budget line item for the EDC. And maybe we take some of that and contribute to our own EDAs within our county. Holly, we know for sure if we contribute to those EDAs, they are spending it to benefit Clay County businesses and Clay County residents. I can't unequivocally say that about the Ignite or the EDC. And don't shoot the messenger. No. But I think those are painful words to hear, but it's as someone who's observed it for several years, it has to be said.
Well, I think we've had the EDC directors here talking to us and kind of showing on paper what they determined was a value to us for investment, and maybe we need to get more answers there. And I do think it's appropriate that we review that investment in comparison to others. Certainly Karen Lauer and Barnesville and our other EDA people in our other communities do a great job, and I'm sure that they could even do better things if they had funds too. So, but I think for the sake of this, I think the new requests are the ones that we should determine now. I want to comment a little bit more on the chamber, and I really like their program, and where I saw the benefit to that would be in these trying times that Darren and our staff has in terms of being able to recruit. And that, it looked like an excellent tool for being able to recruit. But having said that, we need to determine from our standpoint what value that would be to buy into that, to be able to do that. And I don't know that we've been able to clarify that yet. And so I think it's important for us to, and to have a discussion with Darren and our HR and with Steve and see, well, what is the benefit of that? Because I've also, I talked with Mayor Carlson from Moorhead, and she said that the colleges also have similar programs to that, and it goes to Commissioner Gross, what you've said all along, you know, we have so many different areas that we're pumping money into this stuff, and we need to start to realize what's already there and how we can benefit and partner in that than to create all these new investments. So, you know, as much as I liked what I saw there, I don't know that I can put in my mind, I can't put a value to that investment and what our return would be as a benefit to Clay County. I don't know how to weigh that. I'd need to hear more from Darren and Steve in regards to how that would improve our process of hiring, because that's an expensive deal all by itself, you know, so. So what I'm hearing is, under these proposals, that we should keep in B and C. In what you're going to propose to us next time. And maybe in terms of the Ignite, we might have to review that in terms of, and also with the Greater Fargo-Moorhead. See how some of those funds could be used in a better way. Commissioner Kaylee.
I think I would like to see what it looks like if we dropped that Ignite project down to at the same level or just below the Downtown Moorhead Inc. project, because for the same reasons that Jenny, or Commissioner Mosho just said, that, you know, we know these benefit us, B and C for sure. But where's the benefit on A? Where's that going to fall? There will be a benefit, but
Well,
yeah.
And I guess I'm perfectly okay in the preliminary process to do that. I think that's a good suggestion.
Just to look at.
20, is that what you're?
20, yeah, 25, 20, something like that.
So maybe, maybe Steve, if we can, sake of moving on here, an extra 250, adjust that 750 to $1 million, and then, so basically we would be taking out 30,000 from right now the Ignite, right? Is that what you're proposing? And then we'd be, well, we wouldn't be adding that 200 on here. We'd just be pulling that separately as a process, so.
And Mr. Chair, where did the board come out on the extension request?
You had to go back to that. I think what Commissioner Mojo, you're heavily involved with extension. What's your thoughts on that?
Could you run it at the point A or point 8 without the intern? And let us know where we stand.
Good, yeah, I think that's a good place to start, yep. Okay, does that give you some direction for this next go-around, and then we'll relook at that all combined together next Tuesday?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Good.
Is that okay with the board? Good?
And, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, on our budget planning, we had setting the preliminary budget next week. Would you like to push that back to the 28th?
Yes.
Yeah, as long as you are gonna be here, and we're all gonna be here intend to be here anyway on the 20th, okay? Let's,
Won't be.
oh, okay, you won't be.
I've got a,
Well, why don't we put it on the calendar to look at setting that next week based on these corrections? Because like I said, then we can always go down, but we just can't go up. Right? And then if we still have further questions based on what we're seeing, we can just delay that decision. And there's nothing that says that we have to do it based on that. Let's go with the idea in mind that we might be able to set it
Okay.
next Tuesday.
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
And just lastly, Steve, if there's anything within our 2022 proposed budget we have not looked at yet that could potentially get some recovery from CARES 2, we should talk about that. Okay? All right.
Do we have a sheet with all of the new requests? I'm
Yeah.
trying to find it.
We did hand that out last week.
Okay.
But I can,
Just forward it to me again. I don't know where I put it. Thanks.
I'll do that.
And maybe bring those detailed next week, all of them.
Okay.
And that would include the extension at .8. Okay?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so I think that everything with exception of our committee reports. I'm going to start, Frank, you want to go first today?
Since I got 2 weeks to report, I reviewed the other meeting that I missed, and the homelessness was covered by Commissioner Jenny, and the building committee was covered by you, so I don't think there's anything further I need to report on that. I did attend the shack meeting, and I talked a little bit about it to Kathy and about the staff, and we were talking about the long-term care places where the staff is not being vaccinated, and that's where they're getting their lower marks on long-term care. But they did show an increase in grants that they're receiving, a $7 million increase, and a $500,000 increase in tribal health grants, and a $6 million in new public health funds. So they're getting a lot of new grants on public health, so that's gonna help us pretty good. Right now, they're determining the process for distribution, and I don't know when that's gonna happen, when they're gonna take care of that. They talked a lot about the Delta, which spreads twice as fast as the original COVID-19. It's just that the Delta virus in people are just more viruses in them, and it spreads a lot faster. You should be able to take your booster shots 8 months after your first shots, so they should be available. I think they're going to be available this week. I think. I know that Detroit Lakes, Essential Health in Detroit Lakes has been giving them out a couple of weeks ago already, but Sanford is not. So, but I think everybody's going to be giving them out now this week. The only other meeting I had this week was Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. Pretty much not much to improve. They are making up some care packages for families that are soldiers that are overseas. And other than that, I don't know if you attend health fairs or not, but the VA also has a health fair, which is being held, in fact, it's being held today, so. Other than that, pretty much covers my meetings.
Thank you, Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Last week, I attended the Extension Committee meeting. We had good updates from staff in regards to the STEM programming that's been happening with our different after-school program partners. Great involvement there, and then also talked about the youth that they were sending to the state fair. And then gave an update on the new clubs. There's a couple new clubs. One is within the Afro-American Development Organization that they're working with to provide STEM activities for youth in middle school. So great updates there. Also, I've been on that board for several years, and at one point, I believe, and maybe Commissioner Ebbinger can say this, there was only 2 master gardeners within Clay County, and happy to report that they've increased that over tenfold, and I think that definitely can be seen throughout the community. The different master gardener plots that they're working on look phenomenal all over the communities. There's one in Georgetown, the Clay County Courthouse, and LEC, and the library. So it was really exciting to see, especially now with everything in blooming, all that they are doing. And Randy is continuing to field lots of calls, and he is the one that you always hear on the radio and writing lots of articles. So good work.
I could add to that, they had their first in-person meeting last night.
Oh,
And they all got to meet their new interns, and they've got some people with exceptional skills that are coming up in the program. and my wife came home pretty happy. So it's going in the right direction.
All right.
Randy's doing a good job.
Great. That day, I also attended the Cass Clay Food Partners meeting. We approved a issue brief in regards to incorporating food system language into planning documents. That was something that we talked about in May and had the summer to provide any additional feedback. The board did pass that. And then we had updates on different pillars throughout our regional food system. We had an update from the Red River Market, which happens on Saturdays in Fargo, but features great local folks there. An update from the Heart and Soul Community Cafe, the Red River Harvest Cooperative, which is in Moorhead and features local grown produce and is available just off 8th Street. You can shop there, and then the Moorhead Farmers Market as well. We continued our discussion on selling local food in our region. I know that's something that continues to have some sort of cloudiness around it in regards to cottage food laws, because we have 2 states and 2 different regulatory agencies making sure that documents are available to people so they know what is allowed to sell and what's not. And then had a farewell to Kim Lipitsky from Fargo Cass Public Health, who's been one of vibrant members on the steering committee, is retiring. Let's see. I attended a meeting that afternoon on our solid waste joint transfer station facility. Really great update on what's going on there. There is some water issues that had happened because of the rain, but they are pumping it out, so they're able to build some of the pit. I believe the walls are going up soon in the pit, but we addressed the other 2 items at board already. Thursday, I attended the SWCD meeting. Good updates there, continuing to look at their budgets, trying to decipher if they need their second drill or not, if jobs warrant it, but I believe because it's paid for and storage was minimal, they'll continue to keep it, but continuing to go to lots of different meetings to make sure that Clay County is advocated in terms of programming. That afternoon, I attended the Pollinator Patio Party, the partnership with the Clay SWCD, Urban Conservation, and Pheasants Forever, as well as Clay County, because of our partnership on the Pollinator Project in Crestwood. A great opportunity to share knowledge in terms of native prairies and invasive species with folks that attended that, but also plant their own pollinator seeds. A lot of great feedback and great visibility for the SWCD. Yesterday, I attended the ARPA CARES Act Committee meeting. We had an update on the HSME update and talked a lot about going forward with the new executive order, what that means for Clay County as an employer, but also as public health is such a pillar in the community for getting information out, testing, making sure that we're addressing any questions that will come up in terms of testing and where folks can get testing and what the policy means for Clay County when the implementation date is. We're simply trying to comply with the order that came out, and there will be hefty fines upward of $14,000 if there's something that's not complied with, and making sure that we're working with HR to work with our employees to know that this is, at this point, it's voluntary sharing the information, but it really will help us going forward. I think it's maybe fair to say here that I think personally that some of the new regulations will create issues in terms of who is responsible countywide for implementing that. I think that it could potentially be a substantial amount of time, and I don't know that we have an employee currently in position that it would be within their wheelhouse. So I think that we directed the PIC maybe to have further conversations on what that would mean. Certainly it could be paid for with ARPA funds, making sure that our staff already have a great deal of information on their plate, but making sure that we don't miss anything there. I'm not sure if that needs to be a public health position or a HR position, but that conversation will continue. We also had discussion on, we had had several conversations with different partner agencies within our community about advocating for as many different individuals as possible in COVID, and how do we educate as many folks as possible. I think out of that, it may be appropriate at some point to talk about having some sort of cultural community liaison to make sure that all of the different organizations have a go-to person that can provide culturally specific information to help their community. We're one community, but the different cultural representatives know that they have access to information as soon as they can. And so I think that's another piece that we're going to continue to have a great deal of dialogue on, making sure that we are sensitive to areas that we may be shorting, but I think there's more to come there. But Commissioner Campbell and I felt that it was certainly something that would be appropriate to respond to. And I think that's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Ebinger.
Hey, I attended the Northwest Regional Emergency Communication Board meeting in Thief River Falls last Wednesday on the 8th. I'll go through it pretty quick in looking at for the expediency here since we're running late. Basically, systems admin report, there's been a lot of use of the talk channels, talk groups up on the pipeline activities. The grant update, no surprises. Grants have been coming in and being expended by the various PSAPs. PSAP report, the text to 911 is pretty much in the entire region. It's not being widely used, but it's being successful where it is being used. And we had a long discussion on difficulty in hiring 911 dispatchers and retaining them after they're hired. There's a discussion of maybe trying to get them included in the para pension system to see if that could help with retention. On Thursday the 9th, I attended the Minnesota-North Dakota Interstate Mutual Aid for Law Enforcement Roundtable that the city of Moorhead and Mayor Carlson had gotten together. We had quite a group. We had a number of legislators. Mark Courtneykin were there. Heather Keeler attended virtually. We had a couple of other legislators attending virtually. I'm not sure where they were from. They're not familiar names. We had Dr. Lunick, school superintendent, police chiefs from Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, East Grand Forks, Breckenridge, sheriff from Wilkin County, Cass County, North Dakota, and Clay County, mayor of Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, city managers from all of these cities. Basically, we were there to try and discuss how to come up with a solution to what we've had some developments with in the last 24 hours, but the fact that the new deadly force legislation that's been passed has eliminated any North Dakota law enforcement agency from meeting the mutual aid agreements we've had for the last 20 years. And right now, Cass County and Moorhead are pretty much on their own if we have a major incident.
Dave, if I
Yeah.
I'd like to just chime in here. I know that Commissioner Ebinger has been putting an awful lot of time into this, and I know originally it was intended for both of us to be part of that, and I just told Commissioner Ebinger that based on his previous experiences and stuff like that, I didn't feel it was necessary for both of us to, because there's an awful lot of time involved, but I would like to see us add this to his committee list, because he's putting in an extensive amount of time on it, and that would be the Committee of Minnesota/North Dakota Mutual Aid for Law Enforcement, right? Isn't that kind of how we were?
Yeah.
And then if in the event that he couldn't go, I would gladly be an alternate, but I wouldn't intend to go unless he couldn't. So I would like to see us approve that as a committee list.
Do you need a motion on that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I will make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay,
Okay, thank you. The meeting was supposed to go an hour, it went about 2.5 hours. You know, personally, I was a little surprised at some of the response from our legislators. I feel pretty good about Ken Eakin. He views this as something we need to find a solution to. There were some opinions expressed that after Chief Zabelski from Fargo and Chief Monroe from Moorhead outlined the concerns and the difficulties that this has created, there was a couple comments, we'll get over it and make it work. We did have some good input from Brian Melton and John Shockley on it as well about some of the legal aspects of it. Yesterday, I had a long meeting via phone with Carly Stark of the AMC. She's the analyst for the Public Safety Committee. I had sent in a summary of this. We're going to have it as an item for our committee at the meeting this week on policy. We're not going to try and outline anything given the transient nature of the current lawsuit, but it's more an information period that we're going to give the committee so that if we have to move forward in December with getting it as part of the AMC platform, they'll be up to speed on it. As you may have noticed from the article that Steve gave us last night, the Ramsey County Court ruled on the initial part of the lawsuit filed by the Minnesota Chiefs, Minnesota Sheriffs, Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Associations, and the Law Enforcement Labor Services. Judge Castro denied the state's motion to dismiss this case, denied the motion from the governor and the state to have them removed as improper defendants, and granted the plaintiff's motion to proceed with this. And they dismissed the Minnesota statute 609.066 temporarily, and they're going to be having oral arguments in about 60 days. Until that point, we're back operating on the law as it was before March 1st. And any decision on this should be expedited. And that completes my report.
thank you, Commissioner Kaylee.
Last week I attended the Food Partners meeting that Jenny already reported on. One clarification that I would make is that Red River Harvest Co-op is not a physical location that you shop at. It's online, so it's redriverharvest.com. So you place your order Tuesday through Monday, and then everything's picked fresh, and you can either pick it up at that location on Wednesday, or I think there's a $5 delivery charge. So on September 10th, I attended the CAP LP ribbon cutting ceremony for their new building on Bellesley. It's mostly administration, and some other things have moved over there. So the Family Service Center, where CAP LP is on the main floor, will still be a one-stop shop for customers coming in seeking assistance for various things, but this also extends their reach to South Moorhead as well, where people can walk in and get connected up with services there as well. So just an expansion, and very excited for them as they own their new building. Congratulations to CAP LP on that. That concludes my reports.
Thank you. September 7th, I had the Diversion Authority Executive Committee meeting, and we went over a bunch of potential changes in the organizational chart. We're looking at a director of lands and a director of finance, because it's getting to, the work now is starting to really ramp up, and they think that's important to do. That'll be coming before the Diversion Authority pretty soon, I believe. Just to follow up on the 8th, I also attended the owners meeting for the transfer station. Commissioner Moser gave a good report on that. The only thing that I would add to that is we heard that the building now is going to be delivered. They're going to deliver it earlier than anticipated. They wanted to actually deliver the building on the 28th of December, and construction engineers told them no. I'm assuming that's because of the holiday involved during that week. And so it looks like we're going to have the building here somewhere the first week or two in January. So that's good news, because it's, for a while there, we're uncertain about when we would see that building. Then I attended the CARES group yesterday on the 13th, and that's been kind of well discussed, and we did look at some updated information from construction engineers regarding a potential detox building and costs associated to that. That's preliminary in its discussion, so I won't go any further into that. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 8th, participating county management, we had our COVID update. Public Health also updated the flow chart as far as positives potentially, and the need to, what we need to do moving forward with vaccinations added now. We talked about the budget for 2022. Again, we've looked at, asked our departments that have contracts with census information to reconnect with those groups and looking at our budgets. We talked about remote work and also United Way involvement. That afternoon, we participated in the Resource Recovery Facility meeting that's been covered throughout last week. Lori and I continued with budget discussions and planning. On the 9th, we had some insurance discussions with Anna and representatives from our consulting firm and Darren. We also had multiple conversations that day with Brian Melton, Darren and Anna, Jamie Hennon and Kathy in regards to the federal vaccination mandate. Also spoke with Troy Amundson in regards to some issues of detox. The ARPA attended the CARES meeting yesterday. Again, one thing to note, Gabe's update that FEMA is going to continue the federal disaster status. Initially, that was supposed to end in September, and they've moved that to open indefinitely, which is a positive thing for reimbursements. Yesterday afternoon, we had multiple conversations with Ellers for our capital improvement and our resource recovery bonds. Also, yesterday I was notified, I've kind of updated the board, the state of Minnesota is part of a national lawsuit against opioids. I've participated on some regional meetings with other county administrators here in Minnesota. That we received notification yesterday that there is a potential resolution to that national lawsuit, and that we will be looking to give some input through AMC in whether or not Minnesota wants to settle or not. And just of note, there is a meeting up at through our AMC policy group on Friday at 8:15 a.m. where we're going to have some additional conversations on that. And AMC is also going to be providing, after that, providing us some additional board packets to have some additional discussions here publicly and what Clay County would like to see. Again, just a reminder, vaccine clinic the 15th from 1 to 4:30. Again, it's appointment only for Pfizer and Moderna here at the Family Service Center. And we're hoping to have a final date here for the board for the rural city and county meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Colleen, anything to add? We're adjourned.